Welcome to Creepy Vibes. Tonight, we're hitting the open road, but not just any road. These are the long, winding highways of Texas, where the legends stretch as wide as the sky and the nightmares ride shotgun. From deserted rest stops that whisper your name to headlights that follow without a driver. These 20 true road trip horror stories on Texas highways will make you rethink every late night drive you've ever taken. But before we buckle up, here's something strange. Over 90% of viewers leave without subscribing. That means they miss out on the most chilling, real-life horror tales that only the boldest dare to hear. Don't be one of them. Smash that subscribe button now, because what's coming tonight isn't just another ride, it's a descent into the dark corners of Texas most people pretend don't exist. Where are you watching from? And what time is it out there? Drop it in the comments below, because on this highway, it's always midnight. Somewhere. Let's hit the road into the dark. I was driving back from my sister's place in San Antonio, headed north on Highway 281 toward Marble Falls. It was around 10:30 p.m., late enough that most of the smaller towns I passed through were already asleep. Gas stations stood dark, drive-through, windows shuttered, porch lights flickering or off completely. I like that drive at night, less traffic, wide open sky, the smell of cedar and asphalt mixing into something nostalgic. The high beams carve tunnels through the darkness, and the radio hums low under the sound of my tires. It's a lonely road, but familiar. I've driven it 100 times, enough to recognize each bend and cluster of mailboxes by heart. Somewhere near Spring Branch, I noticed the headlights behind me. A car, older model sedan maybe, judging by the low-slung beams and that faint yellow tint the older halogens give off. It was maybe 200 feet behind me, moving at the same speed, 65, maybe 68 miles per hour. Not tailgating, not too far back, just their dot. At first, I didn't think much of it. It's not rare to have someone pacing you out on those long stretches of highway. People zone out, set their cruise control, just follow the next set of taillights. I get it. Hell, I've done it. But after 10 miles, I noticed they hadn't passed me, didn't even seem interested in trying. And I wasn't driving particularly fast. Slowed down to 60 once or twice to see if they'd overtake. Nothing. They just adjusted, matched me again. No closer, no farther. 15 miles in, I started getting annoyed. I flicked on the blinker, pretended to pull off to the shoulder for a second, just tapping the brake enough to flash my lights. Most drivers would pass by at that point, thinking I had car trouble. But this one slowed too, not by much, but just enough. Matched again. I started to feel that prickling on the back of my neck. That ancient animal sense that tells you something ain't quite right. I glanced back a few times, trying to make out the shape of the car. It was dark, no overhead lights. Out there, just moonlight and the occasional glow from a distant porch or lone security light by a barn. From what I could see, it was boxy, maybe late 90s or early 2000s. Couldn't make out the color. No distinguishing features. The headlights were slightly misaligned, the left one angling up higher than the right, like a lazy eye. By the time I passed through Blanco, I knew it had been following me for 30 miles. Still no change in pace. Still, just behind, I passed a closed gas station on the edge of town, the kind with a single flickering neon sign that said open even though the place was dark inside. The car slowed too, keeping pace. I tried to catch a glimpse of the driver in the rearview mirror, but the glare from the headlights made it impossible. Just that anonymous glow, steady and unwavering. Around mile 40, I turned off the radio. My ears felt like they were stretching into the silence, trying to catch something, anything outside the hum of tires. The car was still behind me, always behind, never passing, never pulling back, just there. I took a left fork that would lead me through a winding to lane section, heading toward Johnson City. hoping the curves and hills might shake him. That part of 281 narrows, threads through thick patches of mesquite and live oak, with occasional deer darting across. It's not the kind of road you cruise blindly on. If this guy was just some rando zoning out, he'd either fall back or finally pass. But no, the headlight stayed fixed. I took the curves tighter. So did he. I slowed to 45 for a sharp bend. He slowed. I sped up to 70 on a downhill. He sped up. Every maneuver I made, he mirrored. The road eventually leveled out near a place called Round Mountain. There's a spot where the land flattens, long enough to see the horizon if it weren't for the dense tree lines. My heart was thudding by then. I started muttering to myself, trying to make sense of it. Maybe he was scared too. Pass in the dark. Maybe his brights were out and he was using mine to light his way. Maybe he was just some backroad weirdo who didn't even realize he was doing something creepy. But then the road ended. Or rather, it forked sharply left toward Marble Falls, right toward a rural backroad that meanders past a quarry and disappears into hills and scattered farmland. I took the left, made the turn fast, hoping that was it, that this was the moment he'd keep going straight or finally pass. But the headlights turned too. That was when I knew something was wrong. Not maybe, not probably. Absolutely wrong. I pulled into a gravel turnout off the side of the road, a spot where truckers sometimes sleep. Cut the engine, headlights off. Darkness. I waited. My windows were cracked just enough to hear the crickets outside, the sound of wind rustling through the mesquite. Then the crunch of tires on gravel. The car pulled into dot. It didn't park beside me. It didn't even pull up close. It stopped about 30 feet back, headlights still on, aimed right at my rear windshield. The glare flooded the inside of my car, casting my own silhouette onto the dashboard. I sat still, hands on the wheel, breath caught in my throat. Then, the headlights turned off. My eyes adjusted slowly. The outline of the car became clearer. It was old. A faded blue Mercury Grand Marquis, the kind retired sheriffs or junkies tend to drive out here. Its front bumper sagged slightly, and one of the side mirrors looked bent inward like it had clipped a post. The windshield was too dark to see into. I reached for my phone. No signal. Of course, out here, you could go 30 miles without a bar. I was still trying to think when the driver's door opened. A man stepped out, tall, thin. He moved strangely too stiff, like his limbs didn't bend right. I couldn't see his face, just the shape of him backlit by moonlight. He didn't say anything, didn't call out, just stood there, facing my car. I turned the ignition, threw it in reverse, and kicked up gravel as I shot back onto the road. The Grand Marquis didn't move, didn't follow, not at first. I took off down 281 like a bat out of hell, watching the rear view. For a while, there was nothing, then headlights, same misaligned glare. He was back. I pushed the speed higher, 80, 85. My little Corolla groaned around the turns, but I kept going. The Grand Marquis followed. At exactly the same distance, never closing the gap, never falling behind. He stayed there for another 9 miles, always 30, maybe 40 feet back. A steady, silent presence. I passed a ranch gate with a rusted, longhorn skull nailed above it, and I swear to God, I saw the same gate again a minute later. Same skull, same broken mailbox. The road wasn't looping, but something was. Then I noticed the gas. I'd filled up in San Antonio, but the needle was already near it. Didn't make sense. I'd only gone 60 miles. My tank didn't drop that fast. I watched it fall, tick by tick, like it was being drained in real time. Then, the radio crackled. I hadn't turned it on again, but it buzzed with static for a moment. Then a voice, not a song, not a station ID, just a voice, whispering something I couldn't quite hear. Not English, something older, drier. I hit the power. The static stopped. The car behind me was closer now, not by much, just a few feet. Enough that I could make out a shape behind the wheel. a face, but it wasn't watching the road. It was staring at me. Mouth open, too wide, no teeth. I made a hard right onto an unmarked road. Gravel and dust. My suspension screamed, but I didn't care. I drove for maybe a mile before pulling into a clearing surrounded by scrub. Killed the lights. Sat in the dark. No headlights behind me. No engine sounds. Nothing. For 20 minutes, I waited. Nothing came. When I finally got the courage to leave, I took the long way back through Burnett and caught 29 toward Liberty Hill. Never saw the Grand Marquis again. But here's the thing. Ever since that night, I see it sometimes. In different places, reflected in store windows. Parked across the street, glimpsed through trees on long country roads. And every time, it's just sitting there. Engine running. Waiting. We were just trying to get drunk and sunburnt, like every other college idiot who rolls into Galveston for spring break. Nothing fancy, just beer, bad decisions, and sand in all the wrong places. The plan was to crash at Jackson's cousin's place just off Seawall Boulevard, one of those older homes with hurricane shutters and a sagging porch that smelled like mildew and fried fish. I remember stepping inside for the first time and thinking the place looked like it belonged in a true crime documentary. Cracked tile floors, ceiling fan that groaned every rotation, and a faint humming sound coming from the walls, like the house was trying to tell us something it couldn't quite say. We didn't care. We had 3 coolers full of beer, a gas station, sack full of Fireball minis, and 3 nights to kill before heading back to Austin. There was me, Jackson, his girlfriend Ava, and Miles, our tag-along friend, who always looked like he was either high or about to cry. It didn't matter. That first night, we all drank like the world was ending. Ava passed out on the couch halfway through her second White Claw. Miles threw up in the side yard before midnight, and Jackson and I ended up on the roof, stargazing like idiots and talking about how neither of us wanted to go back to class. It was the second night that things got weird. We'd sobered up enough by the afternoon to hit the Strand, grab shrimp po' boys, and drive up and down the seawall blasting music and catcalling anything that moved. Miles had sobered up more than the rest of us and offered to drive Jackson's old Dodge Durango. We crammed in, windows down, wine in our faces, music up. It was spring break. We felt untouchable. That's when we first noticed the Jeep. It was an older Wrangler, maybe mid-90s, matte black, no doors, soft top off. It looked like something out of a zombie movie, all squared angles and thick tires that made it look ready for a war. I didn't notice it right away. We were laughing at something Ava said, something about the waitress who'd accidentally brought her a Bloody Mary instead of a mojito. But Miles, who was always quiet unless something actually mattered, muttered, "That Jeep's been behind us since the taco place." We brushed it off at first. It's spring break, traffic's thick. You can follow the same car for blocks just by coincidence, but then we started noticing it more. Every left turn we took, it followed. We'd dip into some random side street and it would turn behind us. Miles pulled into a CVS lot just to be safe and turned the Durango around so we could head back toward the beach. The Jeep followed, slow and deliberate, like it wasn't even trying to hide it. "Maybe they're just doing the same thing we are," Ava said, clearly trying to keep things light. Driving around, seeing the town. Miles didn't respond. I could see the tendons in his neck tightening. Jackson leaned out the window and tried to get a better look at the driver. He couldn't see much, just a shape behind the wheel. Whoever it was, they had something covering their face. A scarf or bandana. Maybe. The sun was going down when it got worse. We were trying to shake the Jeep, turning down a series of increasingly obscure back roads. One of them was barely paved, just a thin strip of cracked asphalt bordered by marsh and swampy trees. The kind of place you only end up if you're drunk, lost, or from Galveston. And still, the Jeep followed. Then it cut us off, We were about to make a U-turn to head back when the Jeep shot out from a side street and skidded to a stop inches in front of us. Miles slammed the brakes. We all lurched forward, the seatbelts catching us with a slap. For a second, nobody said anything. Then the driver leaned out. There was something wrong with his or its face. I say it's because the longer I looked, the less human it seemed. There was no bandana, no mask. The face was a smooth stretch of pale skin with no eyes or nose, just a mouth. A wide, lipless mouth that began to move. It didn't speak. Not really. It mouthed something slowly, deliberately. We couldn't hear it, but the message felt personal, like it had studied our speech, our cadence, and was mimicking us. Trying to say something it thought we'd understand, Ava shrieked. Jackson fumbled for the glove box, like he thought a flashlight or folding knife would help. Then the Jeep backed up, no reverse lights, no sound, like it was moving on ice, and sped away into the dark. Miles didn't say a word. He just peeled off in the opposite direction, taking the next few turns fast and blind until we popped out near the highway. No one talked. Ava was shaking. Jackson's knuckles were white on the armrest. We got back to the house and locked every window, every door. No one drank that night. No music. No rooftop talks. Just for people pretending we weren't terrified. I laid on the couch and stared at the ceiling fan, listening to the same hum from the walls. I couldn't sleep, kept thinking about the Jeep. That mouth. The next morning, Jackson's Durango was gone. We assumed it was towed. Or stolen. But the cops said there were no reports of a stolen SUV. No broken glass in the driveway. No tire marks. It was like the car had been plucked off the property without disturbing a single blade of grass. Then Ava noticed something that made my stomach turn. On the small mirror by the front door, someone or something had written in greasy black marker. Same turns. Same end. Jackson went pale. That's what it was saying, he whispered. Last night, that's what it mouthed at us. Miles didn't say a word. He walked out onto the porch, sat down on the top step, and didn't move for hours. Not even when it started to rain. That night, he disappeared. We found the screen door swinging and the porch light on. His wallet was still inside. So were his shoes. Cops dragged the bay and combed the beach. Nothing. Not a footprint. Not a clue. Ava refused to stay another night. She booked the first flight back to Austin and begged Jackson to come with her. He refused. Said something about needing answers. I tried to talk him out of it, but he wouldn't listen. He said the Jeep wasn't just following us, it was copying us, learning from us. The night I left, he looked me in the eye and said, "Whatever's in that Jeep, it's not from here." That was 5 months ago. No one's seen Jackson since. Ava won't talk about it. She moved to Denver and changed her number. I get these weird texts sometimes. No number, just letters, coordinates, maybe, or code. And me? I don't go near the coast anymore, especially not Galveston. But last week, while driving through Austin, I saw it again. Same Jeep. Same matte black. No plates. It made every single turn I did, every single stop. Even when I pulled into a dead-end alley, when I rolled down my window, it did the same. The driver leaned out. Same featureless face. And this time, I understood what it was mouthing. It was my name. Over and over. My name. I first saw him just outside Claiborne, standing in the heat shimmer off Route 67 near an old Shell station, with its windows busted out and its rusting pumps like metal ribs under the sky. I was driving back from San Angelo, running on barely any sleep, halfway through a freelance job that had gone to hell. I pulled over for a piss and a cigarette, thinking maybe I'd stretch my legs before the last push into Fort Worth. The station looked like it had been empty for decades, the kind of place swallowed by dust and time. One of the signs still read 89 cents a gallon, and another had a Coca-Cola logo half melted by the sun. The building leaned like a tired man. I parked on the gravel shoulder and wandered over, crunching glass and weeds under my boots. I didn't even notice him at first. I lit a cigarette, squinting toward the road, and there he was, maybe 100 yards off, standing just outside the tree line across the highway. I couldn't make out his face, not with the way the heat distorted everything. He wore a long coat, beige or maybe gray, and just stood there like he'd been waiting. No movement, no twitch, no wave, just stillness. I figured maybe he was a rancher or some local loony who'd wandered off his meds. I turned away, figuring it wasn't my problem, but when I looked back a few seconds later, he was gone. I didn't think much of it at the time. Got back in the car, put on some George Strait, and got back to driving. I chalked it up to the heat. Or maybe I'd nodded off for a second. Whatever it was, it didn't bother me until I started noticing him again. That it wasn't every day, not at first, just here and there, always on the side of the road. In Amarillo, I saw him standing on the edge of a rest stop parking lot, just behind a row of cedar trees. In Abilene, he was under a bridge, barely visible through the slats as I crossed over. I only ever saw him for a second or two before he was gone. Never any closer, never any farther, just there. He never followed me directly. I never heard footsteps, never saw him behind me in mirrors. He didn't drive, didn't chase. He was just always somewhere I wasn't looking, and when I did look, he stopped. It got to the point where I couldn't even drive straight anymore. I started pulling over constantly, convinced I'd seen something in the periphery. At gas stations, in rearview mirrors, in reflections off the chrome of other cars. I tried telling myself it was stress or hallucinations from sleep deprivation, but I knew better. It was too specific. He was always wearing that same coat, that same motionless stance, never closer than 50 yards, never more than 200. I started asking people if they'd seen him too. Nobody had. A guy at a diner in Cisco, I looked like hell and asked if I needed a ride to the Another at a Motel 6 in Glen Rose told me the meth in these parts can really fuck with a man's head. But they didn't see him. Not one person ever noticed the man in the coat unless I pointed. And even then, they just looked confused, like I was pointing at nothing. By the time I got back home in Fort Worth, I'd convinced myself that whatever it was, stress, madness, a tumor, be it, would stop. But it did single quotes t. The thing is, he stayed at the same distance. I don't know how else to explain it. Whether I was driving or walking, or even once when I took a plane to Houston for a quick job, I spotted him standing near the damn terminal across from the parking garage, still, coat on, staring at me. I think there was never a face. That's the part that really messed me up. The more I tried to focus on him, the more I realized I couldn't make out his face. It wasn't shadowed or hidden behind anything. There just wasn't one. My eyes kept skipping over that spot, like the brain refused to process it, like it wasn't supposed to. I started losing time. I'd find myself parked in empty lots without remembering the drive. Once I woke up on a bench outside a truck stop in Lubbock, shivering in the early morning cold, with my car locked and parked perfectly a few feet away. I stopped working. My clients dropped me. Understandably, I holed up in my apartment, but that didn't help. I saw him across the street, standing behind the mailbox cluster at the end of the lot. I moved the next week, a full county over. Didn't matter. He was waiting outside the U-Haul place when I returned the truck. I went to a therapist, told her everything. She had a kind face, calm voice, asked about my childhood trauma, my drug use none, my sleep awful. At the end of the third session, she told me it sounded like a severe dissociative break, probably triggered by prolonged stress and isolation. That it was good I was reaching out, that with time, we could retrain the brain to reject the delusion. I asked her to come look out the window with me. She humored me. I pointed to the figure, standing in the far end of the parking lot by the dumpster. She squinted, paused, then she smiled politely and said, I don't see anything there. I almost punched the glass. I stopped going after that dot, then came the night I decided to test it. I was tired of feeling watched, tired of the waiting. I figured, if he always stayed at the same distance, I'd try something new. I went back to the gas station outside Claiborne where it had started, left my car by the road and walked straight into the woods where I'd first seen him. It was dusk, and the cicadas were screaming in that relentless way they do in Texas, a wall of noise that made me feel sick. I walked until I couldn't hear the highway anymore. Then I stopped, waited. At first, there was nothing. Then I turned slowly, scanning every inch of the trees. And there he was, not ahead of me, not behind me, but to my left, at the same distance as always. That's when I realized something new. He wasn't choosing a position and staying there. He was repositioning himself in real time, always staying just out of reach. I picked up a rock, threw it, didn't land anywhere near him. I screamed, cursed, tried to rush at him. The moment I blinked, he was gone. But this time, I didn't feel like he'd left. I felt like he'd shifted. That was weeks ago. Now he's closer. Not by much. Maybe 10 feet closer than usual. But I notice. I always know exactly how far he is, like a yardstick in my mind. The closer he gets, the heavier I feel. Like gravity is warping around me. And there's this noise now. It started soft, like a hum just under my hearing. I thought it was tinnitus. But now it's a whisper, always right behind me. I can't make out the words, but they make my teeth ache. I stopped looking. That was my mistake, because I think that's what he was waiting for. Yesterday, I went to brush my teeth and saw him in the mirror, standing behind me in the reflection, in the hallway near the kitchen. But when I turned, he wasn't there. This morning, there was a smear on my bathroom mirror, like someone had pressed a wet palm against it. I live alone. I don't know what happens when he reaches me. I don't think anyone does, but I think that's how it ends. Not with a scream, not with blood, just with that whisper finally making sense, and my face vanishing from every mirror. I didn't plan on driving through West Texas at night. Anyone who's made that stretch between Alpine and Marfa will tell you it's better done by daylight, when the mountains glow red and the desert's not swallowing everything around you. But plans don't always hold, especially when your alternator goes out in Fort Stockton and the mechanic takes 6 hours to patch it with a part that probably came off a tractor. So I left Alpine just after sunset, telling myself the drive was only 30 minutes, maybe 40. Straight shot west, empty road, no problem. I was alone, no girlfriend, no dog, just me and my dusty old Toyota Tacoma, a cooler of gas station burritos, and the dying hum of AM radio stations that faded into static the deeper I got into the desert. I was heading toward Marfa to photograph the stars. I'd done it before, but never during the new moon. That night, the sky was supposed to be so clear you could see the Milky Way dripping across the heavens. I wanted that shot, a perfect time lapse, stars crawling across the sky over a black ribbon of highway. The road was empty. Always is out there. No towns, no billboards, not even a fence line. Just cactus and creosote and a kind of silence that seeps into your bones. You feel small out there, the kind of small that makes your mind wander. Makes you think about things like how long it would take someone to find your body if you broke down. Makes you glance in your rearview mirror every now and then, even if there's nothing but dust behind you. At first, I didn't notice the lights. I was coming up a long rise, the kind of hill that fools you into thinking you're still going straight until the road suddenly drops again. That's when I saw them, the headlights, far behind me, maybe a mile or more. Nothing strange about that. Another driver, a late traveler, same as me. Only, when I topped the hill and looked back again, they were gone. Desert plays tricks on you, I thought. Heat distortions, weird angles. Maybe they turned off onto one of those dirt ranch roads. But something about it didn't sit right. There was no turn off, just asphalt. And those lights hadn't faded. They'd blinked out, like someone shut them off all at once. I shook it off. Hit play on a half-finished podcast, took a bite of a cold burrito, kept driving. For a while, I didn't see anything. The stars came out, and the sky cracked open wide. Gorgeous. Yeah, but there was this knot building in my stomach, something tight and wrong. The air felt heavier, and that's when I saw the lights again, closer. This time, I noticed them in my rear view. No mistake about it. To pale yellow beams, to high and to bright to be modern headlights, they had a strange quality to them, hazy around the edges, like they weren't cutting through the air, but glowing inside it. I watched them for a solid minute. They didn't bounce like normal headlights on a bumpy road. They just glided. Smooth. Silent. I slowed down. Let them catch up, thinking maybe it was some guy with old fog lights or a lifted truck, but they didn't get any closer. Just hung back, pacing me. Never gaining, never falling behind. I tapped the brakes. Nothing. No. Reaction. Then they were gone again. Not dimming. Not turning. Just gone. I pulled over. Engine idling, hazards on, and stepped out. The wind had picked up. Dry and warm, carrying that smell of dust and mesquite. I looked up and down the road. Flat blackness in every direction. No lights. No engines. No tire crunch. Just the wind. All right. I muttered. You're tired. You're spooking yourself. I got back in and drove. A little faster now. 20 minutes to Marfa. Maybe less. I passed a cattle guard, a sagging barbed wire gate. No signs. No houses. Just road and desert. Then the lights came back. Only now. They weren't on the road. They were in the brush. Off to the right. Maybe 30 yards out. Same hazy yellow glow. Still gliding. Smooth as oil on glass. Moving parallel to the road. Keeping pace. My stomach dropped. There was no road over there. No way a car could move like that across cactus and scrub and dry rock. I gripped the wheel tighter and hit the gas. They followed, not falling behind, not straining to keep up, just staying there, drifting beside me, always at the same distance. My speedometer hit 70. The Tacoma rattled. The lights didn't waver. They just floated through the desert like they didn't care about the ground. Beneath them. Then they blinked out again. I kept my foot on the gas. Didn't slow. Didn't blink. Just watched the mirrors. Watched the sides of the road, waiting for them to reappear. I passed a dry creek bed, a twisted mesquite tree. Every shadow looked like it was about to move. I turned off the radio. No sound but the hum of the tires. And then the lights came back. Now they were on both sides of the road. To sets. For lights, closer. Maybe 10 yards out. Still no vehicles. No silhouettes. Just those goddamn floating beams keeping pace, weaving in and out of the creosote like they were searching for a way in. I don't remember exactly when I started crying, but I did. Just silent tears leaking out, one after another, while I gripped the wheel and prayed to a God I hadn't thought about. In years, I didn't understand what I was seeing. I just knew it wasn't right. It wasn't natural. And then, all at once, the lights vanished again. I sped into Marfa doing 85. Blew past the city limits, ran a stop sign, and didn't hit the brakes until I was parked outside the Hotel Paisano. The clerk looked up when I came in, wild-eyed and shaking, and asked if I was all right. I said I'd had a long drive. That's all, just a long drive. I didn't tell her about the lights, or that when I got to my room and opened the blinds to check the parking lot, I saw something move at the edge of the darkness. Just a flicker, like the shine of headlights catching on glass. But there was no car, no engine, just a glint and then nothing. I stayed to nights, never left the room after dark, didn't get the photo. I made the drive back to Alpine at noon, under a sky so blue it looked painted. I passed the spot where I'd seen them. Tried to spot some turn-off, some road, some explanation. There was nothing, just desert. The weird thing is, when I told a guy at the gas station in Alpine what I saw just hinted at it, he didn't laugh. He just nodded, real slow, and said, "Yeah, they don't like when you drive that stretch alone after sundown." I asked who. He didn't answer, just bagged my water and said, "Next time, leave earlier. There won't be a next time." It started with a bag of frozen green beans and an off-brand rotisserie chicken. I'd just gotten off my 12-hour shift at the in Austin, eyes burning from fluorescent lights and the back of my scrubs damp with sweat. The sun was already sliding behind the skyline when I pulled into the H-E-B on East Riverside, a lazy kind of dusk hanging in the air, thick with the smell of hot pavement and distant barbecue smoke. I was halfway through the self-checkout, juggling a purse, keys, and my phone trying to remember if I had eggs at home when I noticed it, a red sedan, parked a rows away, facing me directly. Nothing unusual about that, I told myself. Red cars were common enough. But something about the way it sat there, engine off, but the driver still inside, windows upset, something twitching at the back of my neck. I couldn't see his face clearly through the windshield, just the faint outline of someone watching. I paid, bagged my groceries, and forced myself not to look again. The hospital had been quiet to quiet, in that way that makes everyone walk on eggshells, and I figured I was just strung out from the silence. Still, when I pushed my cart to my car, my eyes kept drifting. The sedan hadn't moved. When I drove off, it pulled out a second later. I caught the motion in my rear view dot. It could have been coincidence. Maybe they just finished shopping too. Maybe they just happened to take the same exit onto 71. But when I took the ramp east toward Bastrop, the red sedan stayed behind me, 2 or 3 cars back, always within sight. It trailed me past the airport, past the slow sprawl of Cedar Creek, even through the winding back roads that led to my place out on Farm to Market Road 969. I live in a rented duplex on a wooded acre, the kind of place where cicadas scream all night and the power flickers every time it rains. It's quiet out here, too quiet sometimes. And when I pulled into my gravel driveway, heart drumming too fast for no good reason, I told myself again it was nothing. I even laughed a little, shaking my head. The sedan didn't pull in. It drove past. That should have ended it. I went inside, put away the groceries, fed my cat, and poured myself a glass of wine. I even started a rerun of some crime show on Netflix, letting the dialogue blur into background noise. But when I got up an hour later to take out the trash, the hairs on my arms lifted. The red sedan was parked across the road. It was tucked in the shadows beside the tree line, angled just enough to see my house. Lights off, engine silent. This time I saw the driver. A man, middle-aged, pale face, expressionless, just staring. I stood there with the trash bag in my hand, frozen for maybe 30 seconds, maybe a full minute. Then I took a breath, walked stiffly to the bin, tossed the bag in, and went back inside without looking again. I locked every door and window, pulled the blinds, turned off the lights, heart pounding like it was trying to punch through my ribs. I told myself to calm down, that he'd probably leave soon, that maybe he was lost or having car trouble. That's what I kept repeating until I fell asleep with the TV still glowing in the corner of the room. The next morning, the sedan was gone. I called my friend Margot from work, half laughing as I told her the story. She didn't laugh back. She listened, quiet, and then said, "You should get a Ring camera." Seriously, I bought one that afternoon. Installed it by myself, even though I had to stand on a shaky plastic stool to screw it into the porch frame. It felt stupid, overreactive, but I told myself better paranoid than sorry. For the next 2 days, nothing happened. I went to work. I came home. The red sedan didn't show. The camera pinged twice for raccoons, once for the mailman, and once because the wind blew a branch too close to the lens. Then came Friday. I left work early, the overloaded with heatstroke cases and a stabbing at a laundromat that still had blood on the floor when Ems wheeled the guy in. I was too afraid to cook, so I swung through a drive-thru on my way home. The sun was low, the trees casting long shadows over the road. I wasn't even thinking about the sedan anymore. Not until I rounded the curve near the gas station on 7-1 Dotted, was parked there, just off the shoulder, like it had broken down. I slowed instinctively, heart kicking. As I passed, I saw the man standing beside the car. Same pale face, same expression. No hood up, no hazard lights. Just standing, watching. I didn't stop, didn't even glance again. Just drove the rest of the way home with my food cooling on, the passenger seat and my hands white-knuckled on the wheel. That night, I kept every light on, watched the Ring camera feed from my phone like it was a live stream of a crime scene. Midnight came. Then 1. Nothing. At 1:24 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected. I opened the app. The video showed the front yard. Moonlight on the driveway, trees swaying in the breeze. For a second, nothing moved. Then, just at the edge of the screen, the red sedan appeared. It didn't pull in. It coasted. I mean that literally. No headlights, no engine. It just drifted into view, like it was being pushed, though there was no one visible behind the wheel. I froze, tried to tell myself it was a glitch, or someone messing with me. But the car kept coming, slow and steady, until it stopped at the edge of the camera's frame. Then, in the last 2 seconds of footage, the driver's side door opened. The video ended there. I didn't sleep. When morning came, the car was gone. No tire tracks, no footprints, nothing. I called the sheriff's department. A deputy came out, a tired-looking woman in mirrored sunglasses who kept checking her watch. She took my statement, looked at the camera footage, and nodded like she saw this kind of thing every week. You got anyone mad at you? She asked. No, not that I know of. Could be someone from work. I'm a nurse. People are grateful. Usually. She didn't say much else. Just told me to call again if the guy came back. Then she left. I watched her taillights vanish down the road and felt a strange sense of being left behind. That night, I drank 2 glasses of wine. Sat on the couch with the volume turned down, ears tuned to every creak of the house. Nothing happened until I went to bed. I left the hall light on and my bedroom door cracked, just enough to see out. Around 3:12 a.m., I woke up to the unmistakable crunch of gravel. I sat up, held my breath. Another crunch. Closer. I grabbed my phone, opened the Ring app. Nothing on the front feed. I switched to the back camera, just in time to catch the taillights of the sedan moving past the tree line. How the hell had it gotten back there? I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Just lay there, heart thudding, until the sun began to rise and the birds started their stupid morning racket. That was 3 nights ago. Since then, things have escalated. I hear footsteps on the porch, scraping sounds under the windows. Once, I found boot prints in the flower bed by the back door, deep and deliberate, like someone had stood there for a long time. Last night, the camera caught a shape in the hallway behind me. A tall silhouette, motionless, standing just outside the bathroom while I brushed my teeth. I never saw it in the mirror. I should leave. I know that, but I don't think it matters anymore. The car isn't just a car. The man isn't just a man. Or maybe he was. Once. Now, it's like he's part of something else. Something that follows without moving, watches without blinking. I'm scared to sleep. Scared to turn my back on any room in my house, because now, even when I close my eyes, I see it. That red shape parked just at the edge of my vision, waiting, always waiting. And the worst part is, I think it wants to come inside. It was just after sunset when I left the rig out near Odessa. The shift had run long, again, and I was dog-tired, crested with sweat and dirt. steel-toe boots heavy on my feet. The August heat hadn't let up even with the sun down, and the wind was blowing hot, dry air like it came straight out of a damn oven. I wasn't in the mood to sit through another 40 minutes of highway traffic. Not after the day I'd had. That's when I remembered the old oilfield road, a dirt trail locals used to take before it got closed off a few years back. Supposedly, the county had shut it down because of safety concerns, too narrow, too remote, and full of potholes deep enough to snap axles. But we all knew the truth. It was just another cut the oil companies made once they dried the land up. They stopped bothering to maintain anything that didn't make them money anymore. I'd used the road a few times before, years back, when I first started working out here. It's not even on GPS anymore, just a sharp turn off Highway 302, marked by a rusted cattle gate and a dead mesquite tree leaning like it's trying to whisper something to the asphalt. Most folks steer clear of it now. They say it leads nowhere, that it's cursed, some of 'em. Old field hands, mostly the kind that drink too much and talk even more. But tonight, I figured it was worth the risk. My truck had new tires, a full tank, and the road, far as I remembered, would shave a good 20 minutes off the drive. And like I said, I was tired. The first couple of miles were just as I remembered. Rough, bumpy, bone-rattling. Dust kicked up behind me in thick clouds, turning the rearview mirror into a blur of swirling beige. The sun had dipped fully beneath the horizon by then, and twilight was bleeding into night. I turned the headlights on. There wasn't much to see, just scrub, dirt, and long stretches of nothing. You could drive for 10 minutes and feel like you hadn't moved an inch. That kind of landscape messes with your sense of time. Everything looks the same. You start to feel like maybe you're stuck, like the world's gone in circles around you. About 15 minutes in, I noticed something strange. The dust trail behind me wasn't fading like it should. Normally, the plume hangs for a minute or two, then drifts off with the wind. But this one stayed thick, dense, clinging to the road like it was stitched there. I slowed a little, leaned forward, squinting into the mirror. That's when I saw the headlights, way back in the cloud, 2 small points of light, low to the ground. At first, I figured it was another worker heading home the same way. Made sense, even if I hadn't seen another vehicle for miles. But the lights were wrong. They didn't bounce or jitter with the terrain. They didn't dim when we hit dips or turns. Just a constant, dead straight pair of eyes floating in the dust. I sped up. Not a lot. Didn't want to bottom out the suspension, but enough to put some distance between us. I figured maybe they'd turn off, or maybe they were just messing around. That happens out here sometimes. Bored kids in beater trucks playing chicken on forgotten roads. Nothing to worry about, but the light stayed the same distance. No closer. No farther. Just then the dust trail started to shift. I mean, actually move. I could see the tire marks I was leaving get swallowed up behind me, erased in real time like something was running a giant hand over the dirt and wiping them clean. Not blown away by wind, not faded by time, just gone. Perfectly smooth road where my tires had just been. I slammed the brakes. My truck skidded slightly, rear end fishtailing. I came to a hard stop, heart thumping in my ears. The lights behind me stopped too, still floating in the dust. Still perfectly aligned. I threw the truck into reverse and backed up fast, aiming to get a better look. But as soon as I moved, so did they. Not chasing, not rushing, just matching my pace. I stopped again, rolled the window down, stuck my head out into the thick, hot air. Listen. Silence. No engine. No wind. Not even insects. Just the distant ticking of my cooling engine and the low crunch of dust settling. I climbed out of the cab. Now, I know how this sounds. If I were hearing it from someone else, I'd say they were sleep-deprived or high on diesel fumes. But I was clear-headed. I knew where I was. I just wanted to get a better look at who or what was behind me. The dust was starting to drift now, a little. I squinted toward the headlights. There was a truck back there, all right. An old one. Big square body, long hood, the kind they stopped making in the early 80s. Matte black or maybe dark gray. Hard to tell through the haze. But here's the thing. It wasn't idling. No sound, no movement. And from where I stood, I could see straight through the cracked windshield. Nobody inside. I mean it. Driver's seat empty. No silhouette. No hands on the wheel. Just a sun-bleached bench seat and a cracked dash dot. Then it blinked its headlights dot, not in a slow, curious way. Just a single, sharp flash. Almost like a warning. I got back in my truck and floored it. I don't know how I didn't wreck right then. The road was getting worse. Ruts and holes deep enough to swallow a tire, brush scraping the undercarriage. But I kept going, white-knuckled, trying not to look back. My side mirrors were useless, caked with dust. I didn't want to see it anymore anyway, except I did look. I don't even know why. Curiosity, fear, some instinct I couldn't shut off dot. It was still there dot, and now it was closer. Maybe 50 yards behind me. No noise, no engine roar, just gliding across the dirt like it was weightless. The dust trail behind it was gone now, completely smooth, like it had never passed over the road at all dot. Then I noticed something even worse dot. There were no tracks. I could still see my own tread marks, skipping across the dirt in frantic, uneven lines. But behind that truck, nothing. The earth behind it was untouched and yet erased. I tried calling someone, pulled out my phone, thumb trembling on the screen. No signal. Of course, I passed an old pump jack, rusted out and leaning sideways, its long arm creaking in the wind like a dying insect. That meant I was close to the loop that would take me back, to the highway. Maybe 5 more minutes, if I could just stay ahead, just stay moving. The truck pulled up beside me. I don't know how it did it. 1 second, it was behind me. The next, right there, to my left, matching my speed exactly. I glanced over and my stomach turned to ice. The cab was full of dust, not dirty, full, like a sandstorm inside a fishbowl. Thick clouds swirling around the empty driver's seat, making shapes I couldn't quite pin down. For a second, I swore I saw a hand form from the dust, a gray, formless limb reaching toward the window. Then it was gone. I jerked the wheel, veering away. The tires caught a ridge and the truck bounced hard. I thought I'd roll for sure, but I managed to stay upright, skidding back onto the trail. The old truck didn't follow. It just vanished. I mean it. 1 second it was there, next, gone. No sound. No trace. I didn't stop until I hit the highway, tires screaming as I made the turn, throwing gravel in all directions. When I looked back, the entrance to the old road was gone. No gate, no leaning mesquite. Just a stretch of blacktop and the fading sunset over empty scrubland. I sat there, for a long time, trying to steady my breathing. Eventually, I drove home, locked every door, and left every light on. I told myself I'd imagined it. That exhaustion and dust played tricks on my mind. But the next morning, I checked my truck. My tire marks, the ones that should have been, caked in red clay and dirt, were clean. And in the bed of my truck, beneath a thin layer of dust, were 2 handprints, too long, too narrow, like they'd been made by something that didn't know what a hand was supposed to look like. I was somewhere between Amarillo and Doll Heart when I noticed the cruiser in my rear view. I'd been driving since morning, and the West Texas sun had scorched the pavement into a blur. That stretch of Highway 385 is dead flat, stretching on for hours through scrub grass and fence posts, with grain silos and half-dead gas stations rising out of the horizon like ghosts. There's not much traffic out there, and even less law enforcement. So, when I saw the cruiser, black and white with the familiar sheriff star on the door, I figured I must have been pushing the speed a little. Nothing crazy, maybe 5 Over but still enough for a bored deputy to use as an excuse to chat. The cruiser didn't flip its lights on, though. It just sat behind me, way too close, maybe 10 feet off my bumper. I slowed down a little, figuring the guy wanted to pass, but he slowed with me. I went down to 50, still there. When I sped back up to 65, he did the same. My stomach tightened. It wasn't panic yet, more like that creeping unease when you realize something isn't quite what it seems, but you can't put your finger on why. I leaned forward, glancing at my mirrors again. The sun was at just the right angle to light up the cruiser in sharp detail. I could see the roof rack, the twin antennas, the wide push bar on the front grille. Everything looked right, except there was something about the decals. At first I thought it was just dust or road grime, but the closer I looked, the more it seemed like the sheriff's emblem was peeling. The vinyl was lifting in thin curls at the edges, like old bumper stickers. Same with the stripes along the side. They were faded and curling, almost like someone had tried to strip them off and gave up halfway. I gripped the wheel tighter, my palms damp. I'd driven through enough tiny towns to know that some departments ran older cars, but this one felt different, wrong. The paint underneath those peeling decals didn't look like the usual white or black primer. It was gray, not metallic silver, just a flat, dead gray, like primer that had never been painted over. Then I noticed something else. There were no unit numbers on the roof, no tag on the rear bumper, just a blank plate holder. The taillights looked like they worked, but there was no plate, no markings, no identifying anything. I pulled off onto the shoulder, thinking maybe the guy wanted to talk to me. Maybe there was something wrong with my car, or maybe it was one of those weird jurisdictional things where they do courtesy stops. I shut the engine off and watched the cruiser pull in behind me. No lights, no siren, just slow, deliberate motion. Dust curled around its tires and drifted into the still August air. I waited. Nothing happened. 30 seconds passed, then a full minute. The door didn't open. No one stepped out. My window was down, and I strained to hear boots on gravel. A voice calling out, anything. Silence. I leaned out and shouted, everything okay back there? Still nothing. I couldn't see inside the cruiser. The windows were tinted just dark, enough to hide whoever was behind the wheel. If anyone was behind the wheel at all. I sat there for another minute, then reached for my phone. No signal. Figures. I opened the door and stepped out. The heat hit me like a hammer, and the air smelled like dust and dry weeds. I shielded my eyes and started walking back toward the cruiser, hands out, trying to look non-threatening. The second I got within 10 feet of the front bumper, the engine roared to life. The cruiser peeled off the shoulder and back onto the highway, accelerating fast. It didn't just leave, it fled. No lights, no warning, just a sudden spray of gravel and the smell of burning rubber. I stood there like an idiot, watching it disappear into the shimmer of heat waves ahead. I jogged back to my truck and got behind the wheel, heart thudding. I drove on, slower now, constantly checking the mirrors. For the next hour, nothing, just empty road and the steady hum of tires on asphalt. Then I saw it again, about 5 miles outside of Channing, where the road dips into a shallow ravine. The cruiser was waiting on the shoulder, just sitting there, angled like it had been parked for hours. I braked, heart racing, but didn't stop this time. As I passed, I looked over. There was no one inside. I'm sure of it. The driver's seat was empty. And worse, the decals were gone. Not faded, not peeled, gone. The whole vehicle was matte gray, like a primered shell. No star, no stripes, no numbers, no nothing. The windows were darker now, like the kind of aftermarket tint you see in cheap car mods, the kind that makes the glass look like obsidian. It was like the cruiser had sloughed off whatever made it recognizable, like it was shedding its skin. I drove faster, knuckles white on the wheel. I didn't stop for gas in Channing. Didn't slow down at the grain elevator or the little roadside church with the broken steeple. I just kept moving. The sun dipped, low, painting the fields gold, and still, in the rear view. Now and then I'd see it. Following, not tailgating anymore, but never far behind. It wasn't trying to pull me over anymore. It was just watching. Around dusk, I took a turn-off knew led to an old hunting road. Narrow and rocky, winding through mesquite and prickly pear. It was a gamble, but I figured if it was some whacked-out cop or prankster, they'd have no reason to follow me off the highway. Nobody went down that way unless they were going somewhere specific. I drove for 20 minutes. No sign of headlights. I finally parked under a dead cottonwood tree and shut everything off. No engine, no radio. Just silence and the ticking of cooling metal. I sat there for a while. Maybe an hour. Just when I started to believe I'd lost it, I saw the glow dot headlights, way off through the trees, slow and steady, crawling over the rocks and brush. Impossible for a cruiser to manage, but there it was. I left the truck and ran. I didn't get far. Maybe 100 yards into the mesquite before I tripped and went down hard, dirt and stickers in my mouth, knees scraped. I rolled over to see the cruiser at the edge of the trees. It didn't move anymore, just idled there, silent. The engine made no sound now. There were no lights, no movement. But I knew it was still running, still watching. And then, the door opened, but nothing came out. The door opened wide, paused, for a few seconds, then closed again, like something invisible had stepped out and shut it behind. I stayed where I was until sunrise. Every time I tried to move, I felt it again, that wrongness, like the air itself had teeth. Eventually, the cruiser disappeared. Just gone. No sound, no movement. I blinked, and it wasn't there anymore. I limped back to the truck, started it up, and drove until I hit Dumas, where I finally had signal. I didn't call the cops. What was I gonna say? That a car followed me, then disappeared, that the decals peeled off like skin. I've thought about it every day since. The Panhandle is full of old highways and abandoned patrol cars, vehicles. They auction off or leave to rot in back lots. It's not hard to imagine one getting back on the road somehow. But not like this. This wasn't a prank. Wasn't a rogue cop. Wasn't even a person. I don't know what it was, but it wears a badge. It doesn't deserve, and if it ever pulls you over, don't stop. God help you. Don't ever stop. We left Terlingua just after lunch, our rentals sea wheezing against the August heat as we climbed back into the slow roll of FM 170. It was one of those wide, desolate highways that stretches out like an artery of the sun, pulsing with shimmer and dust. The Rio Grande ran beside us, sometimes close enough to see through the scrub, other times swallowed by rock and distance. It was quiet country, the kind that feels empty in a way that doesn't invite you to fill it. Maria was at the wheel, sunglasses perched low on her nose, humming along to a Lucinda Williams song barely audible over the hum of the road. I leaned back, letting the rhythm of the highway lull me into that half-state between alert and drifting. We were planning to spend the night in Presidio. Check out the lights people talk about out there. Not that I believed in any of that, but Maria liked that sort of thing. She was always hunting for something unexplained. Said she liked knowing the world still had pockets that didn't make sense. We first noticed it just outside Redford, a glint in the rear view. Not unusual at first, just another biker in black leathers. Maybe heading for the state line or looping around Big Bend. But then it started to gain on us, not with the controlled pace of someone passing, but in these strange bursts. It would lurch forward, close the gap between us almost too quickly, then fall back again, keeping just far enough away that we couldn't get a clear look. It didn't ride like a person was behind the bars. It weaved, tilted to sharply, wobbled, on straight stretches like it was being buffeted by wind we couldn't feel. Maria muttered something under her breath, sat up straighter. Is that guy drunk? I turned, squinting through the dusty back window. The bike was black, maybe matte or rust covered in road grime, with saddlebags flapping and a windshield scabbed with insect guts. No helmet, no rider, no reflection off a visor or face shield. Just empty handlebars and a fat back tire chewing up the pavement. There's no one on it, I said, not quite believing it myself. Maria glanced in the rear view, frowned, and eased her foot off the gas. That's not funny. I'm serious. She looked again, longer this time. I could feel her getting tense, one hand adjusting her grip on the wheel, the other hovering near the turn signal like she was about to pull off. You're seeing this, right? I asked. She nodded. It's pacing us. We slowed, and it slowed. We sped up, and it followed, always just far enough to stay behind us, never passing, never dropping off. The sun was burning westward, sinking into the bruised skin of the desert horizon. Shadows stretched long across the road, painting the edges of the brush and buttes with darkness that felt thicker than it should have. Maria flicked on the headlights. The motorcycle's headlight came on too. No one touched the switch. My mouth went dry. We should stop. Let it pass. No way in hell, she said. We stop, and it stops. You want to get out and check it? I didn't answer. We passed a dirt turnout that led to an old ranch road, and Maria yanked the wheel to the right, tires spitting gravel as we bumped off the pavement. The road curved, and from the rear view, I saw the bike slow to a stop on the shoulder of FM 170. It sat there, engine idling. One wheel turned slightly like it was thinking about following. Then the headlight went dark. We waited, not talking, engine idling. Maria's breathing was loud, deliberate. When we finally edged back onto the highway, the bike was gone. But that wasn't the end of it. Presidio was a strange place even before the weirdness. The streets felt like they belonged to another time. Low buildings faded and sun-blasted, chain-link fences curling with age, dogs that didn't bark as we passed. We checked into a dusty motel just outside town, the kind with metal keys and a window unit that sounded like it was grinding rocks. Maria didn't say much while we unpacked. She kept glancing out the window toward the parking lot. That night, around 2 a.m., the motel room filled with a low, vibrating sound like a motorcycle idling somewhere nearby. At first I thought it was a dream, but Maria sat up too, her eyes wide and focused. You hear that? It was close, just on the other side of the wall. A soft revving, a slow twist of the throttle, not aggressive, almost patient. I crossed to the window and pulled the curtain aside. The lot was empty. No cars except ours. No bikes. But the sound didn't stop. It stayed for another 20 minutes. Never moving. Just purring like a cat outside the door. When it finally faded, it didn't ride off. It just stopped, like the engine had never been there to begin with. We left early the next morning. Didn't even bother with breakfast. Drove north toward Marfa, thinking maybe a change in scenery would shake the feeling. But that road FM 170, it doesn't let go of you that easy. We stopped for gas at a tiny station near Shafter. It was one of those places where you have to go inside and tell the guy behind the counter how much you want to pump. The old man barely looked at us, just slid a key across the counter for the bathroom. You'll come in from Terlingua? He asked, without lifting his eyes. Yeah, Maria said. Why, you see it. She paused. See what? He looked at her then. Pale eyes, skin like old leather. The bike? Maria didn't answer. You know it don't ride with a man. Hasn't in years. What do you mean? Back in '97, there was a wreck out near the Canyon Bend. Local kid. Rode. Too fast. Lost control. Went off the side. They never found the body. Bike was mangled, but the engine still turned over. Some folks say it climbs back up the road now, looking for home. That's just a story, I said. He nodded, like he'd heard that before. Sure it is. Still, I'd stay off 170 after dark. Sometimes it don't follow. Sometimes it leads. We Didn't have much to say on the drive out of town. Every now and then, I checked the mirrors. Nothing back there but dust and heat. Maria kept her eyes on the road, hands tight on the wheel. It's been months now. We live back in Austin. The trip feels like something we dreamed, some fevered memory soaked in sun and fear. But sometimes, at night, I swear I hear it, that soft rumble, that idling engine, just beyond the fence line. And sometimes I check the mirror while I'm driving, just to be sure, because I know what I saw, and I know it wasn't done with us. I was about 10 miles outside Palestine, Texas, when the engine sputtered and died, leaving me stranded on a shoulderless strip of highway with nothing but pine trees pressing in on either side. It was late, closer to midnight than not, and the stretch of farm road 837 I was on hadn't seen another pair of headlights in over an hour. My cell signal was weak, just enough to make one call before the screen froze and the battery drained like a leak in a bucket. The voice on the other end belonged to a tow dispatcher in town, some guy named Roy, who sounded half asleep and not particularly thrilled to hear from me. He said he'd tried to get someone out before sunrise, but they were backed up with a wreck off Highway 79. Said it could be a few hours. So I did what you do. I locked the doors, turned off the dome light, pulled my hoodie tight around me, and tried to settle in. The darkness out there wasn't city dark. It was thick, humid, rural East Texas dark, the kind of dark that breathes. I cracked the window just enough to let the night air in, heavy with the smell of pine sap and distant skunk. The heat hadn't broken all the way yet, even though it was late September, and the inside of the car turned into a sticky, uncomfortable pocket of stale sweat and bad radio static. I should have been scared, I guess, or at least nervous. But mostly I was tired, bone tired. I'd been driving all day from Dallas, heading toward a funeral in Lufkin, and I hadn't eaten anything but gas station crackers and warm Coke. So, I reclined the seat a little, closed my eyes, and let myself drift. I never fully slept, just floated in and out of that weird twilight state where your brain starts to spin images you think are dreams. But then your eyes crack open, and there's only the blur of trees and darkness outside your windows. At one point, I thought I heard a tapping light, almost lazy on the driver's side window. But when I sat up and looked around, nothing was there. The road was still empty. The pines stood motionless. The night buzzed with the usual orchestra of frogs and bugs and rustling leaves. I figured it was a branch dropping a pinnacone or something dumb like that. Still, I hit the lock button again, just to be sure, and wiped the fog from the inside of the glass with the sleeve of my hoodie. Then I noticed the smell. It wasn't strong, just odd, subtle, like something coppery and wet. I thought maybe something under the hood had started leaking, but I wasn't about to pop it open and go poking around with a flashlight like a horror movie idiot. I didn't even have a flashlight. So I sat still, told myself it was probably the engine coolant or a dead armadillo somewhere nearby, and tried to push the unease down deep where it couldn't reach me. A few more hours passed. Maybe I dozed off again. I remember checking the time, 3:17 a.m., and then it felt like only minutes had gone by when the sky began to lighten in that eerie pre-dawn way, all gray-blue and hollow like the world hadn't quite decided to wake up yet. Birds started calling in the distance, and I finally felt a little safer, the way you do when you think the worst is over and the sun is coming. I sat up, stretched, checked my phone dead. Of course, and cracked the door to let in some fresher air. I figured I'd piss behind the car, maybe stretch my legs, maybe even flag down someone once daylight hit proper. I grabbed my empty water bottle, stepped out, and immediately noticed something wrong. Footprints. Lots of them. They were all around my car, sunk into the soft reddish dirt and gravel that passed for a shoulder. Barefoot, mostly, some small, like a kid's, others longer, narrow, but they were everywhere on both sides of the car, even right up to the windows, circling, doubling back. some so fresh the edges hadn't crumbled yet. The tracks overlapped each other like a dance, a chaotic, swirling pattern that made my skin crawl the longer I looked. And none of them led away. My first thought was that someone had messed with me while I slept. But that didn't make sense. I would have heard them, I'd have woken up. And even if I hadn't, who walks barefoot on that kind of gravel in the middle of the night? Who walks barefoot in circles around a stranger's car for hours? I followed the prints slowly, my stomach tightening with each step. The sun was rising now, burning through the mist in dull orange streaks. I made my way around to the back of the car and stopped cold. On the rear windshield, someone had written in the dust with a fingertip. Haloy took a step back. My throat went dry. I checked the doors again. Locked. All still locked. No windows broken, but whoever had done that had been close. Inches from me while I slept, watching. Maybe more than watching. I got back in the car, locked the doors again, and waited for Roy. I didn't get out after that, not even when I heard what sounded like laughter coming from the woods behind the tree line. High-pitched, reedy, not quite human. The tow truck didn't show up until nearly 9:30. Roy was a fat, red-faced guy in a dirty cap who looked hungover and smelled like old cigarettes. When I told him what I saw, he gave me this slow, measured look and said, "Yeah, people say stuff like that sometimes. Out this way, I mean, weird shit happens. Might be old ghost stories. Might just be some of those tweaker camps back in the woods." I asked him how often that sort of thing happened. He just shrugged. Often enough you stop a skin. He didn't want to talk more about it, and I didn't press. I just climbed into the cab of his truck, still shaking a little, and watched that stretch of road disappear in the rearview mirror as we drove back toward town. But I keep thinking about those footprints, the way they crisscrossed, shuffled, overlapped. How many sets there were? 10, 20, I don't know. But there was no direction to them, no intent, just presence, like something had waited with me, around me, all night. Not just one person. A crowd, a gathering dot, and not a single one of them had ever walked away. They're probably still there, waiting, just past the tree line, watching the road for the next car that breaks down. I've been driving west out of Eagle Pass for about 40 minutes when the first thought of turning back crossed my mind. Not because of anything specific. Just that feeling you get sometimes, like your gut is tugging on your spine. I'd missed my turn earlier, somewhere past La Pryor, and Google Maps kept rerouting me through more and more obscure farm roads. The sun had dipped low, pressing long black shadows out of the mesquite trees and scrub brush that lined both sides of the road. I hadn't seen another vehicle in nearly an hour. No fences, no lights in the distance, just empty Texas brushland, flat and empty except for the buzz of cicadas and the occasional rustle of wind. I pulled onto what I thought was FM 481, but the signage was faded and bent backward. The road was narrower than I expected, just two skinny lanes of crumbling asphalt with sharp edges that dropped off into loose gravel. I slowed to a crawl, squinting at the GPS. The blue dot jittered for a second, then snapped back half a mile. Behind me, rerouting again. That's when I decided to make a U-turn. Simple. I'd turn around, go back to the last crossroad, and take the safer highway route. No reason to press deeper into nothing. I eased off the road, tires crunching into the shoulder. As I swung the nose of my rental car into the turn, I noticed something in the rearview mirror, a pair of headlights. Dim, but steady, a truck. Big one. By the silhouette, older model. Maybe late 70s or early 80s, boxy and lifted. It was parked dead center in the road about 50 feet behind me, just sitting there. No engine noise, no dust cloud from its arrival, just there. I hadn't seen it come up behind me, and there was no turnoff it could have emerged from. It was like it had always been there, and I just hadn't noticed. I finished the turn and straightened the wheel, heading back the way I came. But the second I started moving, the truck did too. It reversed, slow and steady, matching my speed exactly. I tapped the brakes and came to a stop. So did the truck, still in reverse. Its red taillights glowed faintly in the dusk. At first, I figured it was some weirdo trying to mess with me. Locals in tiny towns do that, sometimes screw with out-of-towners. I thought about flashing my high beams or maybe backing up closer to see who was driving. But something about the truck's presence made my skin tighten. There was no license plate, just rust, chrome, and darkness behind the windshield. I pulled off to the side of the road again, let the truck pass if it wanted. But it didn't. It slid diagonally with me, still in reverse, its tires tracking mine like it was tethered by some invisible cord. It didn't rev. It didn't lurch. It just moved, always the same distance behind me. I sat for a minute with the engine idling, staring into the mirror. I couldn't see a driver, not even the glint of movement inside the cab. The windshield looked black, like someone had painted it from the inside. Just an old black pickup, hovering there in reverse. Eventually I started driving again, slow and cautious. The road dipped and curved, and every turn I made, the truck mirrored. Left, right, slowing around bends, speeding up on straightaways. It never got closer, never fell behind. I even sped up to 50 for a stretch, just to see. The damn thing reversed faster, matching me without struggle, its red lights unwavering in the dusk. That's when it hit me. I hadn't seen it driving forward. Not once. I'd only seen it going backward. Somehow, it had reversed out of nowhere, and continued to do so like it was the most natural thing in the world. My palms were slick with sweat. My throat felt dry. I didn't want to admit it, but fear had started crawling into my chest like ants through a cracked window. I came to a stop again. This time I got out. I stood in the middle of the road and stared back at it, 50 feet of empty asphalt between me and the truck. The wind stirred dust along the shoulder. Somewhere far off, a bird screamed once, long and sharp. The truck didn't move. It idled there without noise, and the longer I looked, the more unreal it seemed. The shadows beneath it were too dark. The red tail lights didn't flicker. No exhaust plume drifted from the tailpipe, which was twisted and rusted like a crushed soda can. I yelled something, I don't remember what exactly. Just a desperate sound meant to break the silence. It didn't answer. I took a few steps toward it. Nothing. But as I moved, I realized something off about the tires. They weren't spinning, not forward or back. The truck was gliding, sliding over the road like it wasn't even touching it. I got back in my car and punched the gas. I drove for miles, twisting through the darkening brushland, headlights bouncing off scrub and sagging fence posts, and every glance at the mirror showed me the same thing, those two glowing red lights, drifting in perfect reverse, always the same distance, never gaining, never falling away. Night had fallen hard by the time I saw the old windmill. I remembered passing it earlier. The rusted frame leaned left, missing its blades, surrounded by a tight cluster of cacti and broken fence posts. The GPS still offered no help, but I knew I was looping. The black pickup was keeping me trapped in some kind of circuit. Like it wouldn't let me leave, I made a sudden turn onto a dirt path, flinging dust in every direction. The truck followed, without hesitation, skidding sideways, but never breaking its backward glide. I turned again, this time into a rocky dry creek bed, hoping to lose it. My suspension groaned, and stones clattered under the chassis, but I pushed on, bouncing and jerking through the wash. Finally I stopped behind a ridge, engine ticking in the silence. No sign of the truck, nothing in the mirror. Just night and stars, and the ragged silhouette of distant trees. I got out again, heart hammering. Still nothing. No red lights. No noise. Just the sound of blood in my ears. I walked up the ridge, stepping over rocks and brambles, my shoes crunching loud in the quiet. When I reached the top, I turned and looked back down the road I'd come from. There it was. Not on the road, not driving. It was parked at the base of the ridge, front end now facing me, headlights off, black grille shining faintly in the moonlight. Still no driver, no sound. It had turned itself around without me seeing. I froze. Something deep in my brain went, cold and quiet, like the part of me that screams during nightmares. I backed away slowly, keeping my eyes on the truck, and climbed back into the car. I didn't start the engine. I just sat in the dark, staring through the windshield, gripping the wheel. Then, it started forward. No noise. No lurch, just forward, smooth as glass. I turned the key, slammed the gas, and barreled out of the creek bed, back onto the road. I didn't care where it led. I didn't look at the GPS. I just drove, faster than I ever have, praying for lights, houses, anything. I finally hit pavement, again around 2 in the morning, near an old gas station east of Batesville. The place was boarded up, but there was a payphone out front. I didn't call anyone. I just sat next to it, watching the horizon behind me. No truck. Eventually, a sheriff's deputy found me. Said someone reported lights out in the scrub where nobody should have been. I told him part of it, just enough to explain my panic. He didn't laugh. He didn't even smile, just asked what the truck looked like. When I described it, his face changed. Black 79 Chevy. He asked, "Boxy, no plates." I nodded. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he told me a story about a man who used to live out near Quemato. Loner, kept to himself. People said he went crazy after his wife vanished. Spent days driving back roads looking for her. One day, they found his truck upside down in a dry riverbed, half buried in sand, no body, just the truck. Engine still warm, gear shift stuck in reverse. That was 30 years ago. I've never gone back near Eagle Pass. I still see the truck sometimes, though. Not on the road, in dreams, in reflections. I'll be walking past a window at night and catch a glimpse of red lights, floating in the dark. Always 50 feet behind me. Always in reverse. I saw him first just outside of Atascocita, where FM 1960 curves past an old shuttered diner with a cracked sign still advertising a catfish special that hasn't been served in over 20 years. It was nearly midnight, and the fog had started to roll in off Lake Houston, the kind that looks like it's crawling, low and slow, hugging the ground. I was driving alone, heading east toward Livingston, trying to make good time after visiting a buddy in Houston. The plan was simple: cut through the back roads and avoid the late-night construction on I-69. FM 1960 was supposed to be quiet this time of night, nothing but pines and dark sky. My headlights caught him for just a second. A man walking along the shoulder, facing traffic. That's what you're supposed to do, I guess. He was thin, maybe 6 feet tall, wearing what looked like an old army jacket and jeans. But what stuck with me, what froze my hands on the wheel, was the way he glowed. Not like reflective clothing, not like someone with a flashlight. He glowed from within. A steady, pale light, like a lantern buried under his skin. I blinked and he was gone. Just trees and fog, but the feeling didn't leave. You know how sometimes your skin crawls before your brain catches up? That's what it was like. I shook my head, told myself I was tired. Too much coffee and gas station beef jerky. Probably some fog and headlights playing tricks on me. Still, I checked the rear view. Nothing. I drove another mile, 2, then 3. Then I saw him again. Same side of the road. Same glow. Same slow pace. But he was still ahead of me. I pressed the brakes. Gently at first, then harder. I slowed too. A crawl. Engine humming. Eyes locked on the figure. This time I made sure I passed him. I watched in the side mirror as I rolled by. He didn't look up, didn't move, just kept walking, face tilted toward the ground, jacket open to reveal a stained white shirt beneath. His hands swung at his sides. I passed him, no question, but less than 5 minutes later, he was back. Same spot, same walk. Still ahead of me. Now I know Texas roads well enough to understand this kind of shit doesn't just happen. There's no parallel service road he could have ducked onto, and even if he had a bike stashed in the woods, there's no way he could have beaten me to that spot without me seeing him, unless he was cutting through the trees at a dead sprint, and even then, the underbrush out there is thick. Nothing but pine needles, bramble, and beer cans. I started talking out loud, trying to make it make sense. Maybe he had a twin. Maybe it was some kind of prank, some high school kids messing with dash cams. I turned the radio on, then off. Nothing helped. At the edge of Huffman, where the woods thin out and the roadside turns to open pasture, I saw him again. This time closer. He stepped off the shoulder and onto the edge of the asphalt, forcing me to swerve toward the center line. I laid on the horn, yelled something stupid out the window, half hopeful, half panicked. He didn't flinch. The glow wasn't bright, but it had presence. It wasn't lighting the road or the trees around him, just him, like he carried his own moonlight inside his skin. The light seemed strongest in his face, soft and bluish like the color of an old TV screen. His eyes looked dim, not reflecting anything, but lit from within. I swear to God, he looked dead. I gunned it, blew past him, and didn't stop until I hit Dayton. At a Valero station, I filled up on gas I didn't need and bought a Mountain Dew, thus to have something cold in my hand. The clerk gave me a weird look when I stood at the window staring back toward the road. I wanted to ask her if she'd ever seen anything strange along 1960, but I couldn't form the words without sounding like a lunatic. I left the station, fast, not even sure where I was headed anymore. I thought about taking 321 up toward Cleveland and cutting over to 146, avoiding FM 1960 altogether, but something pulled me back. I told myself I was being irrational. Whatever I saw, whatever I thought I saw, it was behind me now. I turned around. The road was darker on the way back. Fog thicker. The trees pressed closer. I passed the lake again and kept scanning the shoulder, waiting, daring him to appear. Nothing, until the engine stalled. No warning, no sputter, just silence. I coasted to a stop near an old RV dealership. Long abandoned, the trailers half swallowed by vines and dust. I turned the key. Nothing. No lights. No radio. Not even the clock. Battery gone. Just like that. I stepped out. Phone in hand, but it was dead too. I stood there in the quiet, looking down both directions of the road, wondering if I should walk back to Dayton or toward Huffman. The air felt wrong, still, but not peaceful. Like the woods were holding their breath. That's when I saw him again, closer than ever, no more than 20 yards down the road. He wasn't walking anymore. He was standing, watching. The glow was stronger now. His whole body shimmered like heat rising off blacktop, but in cold light. He took a step forward. I called out, "Hey, what the hell are you?" He didn't answer, just kept coming. One slow step at a time. His face was clearer now, skin pale and stretched, eyes like dying embers. His mouth moved, but no sound came out, just that soft hum, like distant static. I backed up toward my truck, heart hammering, legs weak. I felt something in the air shift, a pressure in my ears, like descending in an airplane. I turned to run, but the headlights came on by themselves, and he was already beside me. No footsteps, no approach, just there. He reached for me. I don't remember screaming, but I must have, because my throat hurt afterward. The next thing I remember, I was driving again, tires kicking gravel, pedal pressed to the floor. The clock on the dash read 3:13 a.m. I had no idea how much time had passed. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the wheel. I didn't stop again until I crossed into Liberty County. I took a motel room off the highway and locked the door twice. Didn't sleep, didn't eat, just sat in the bed with the light on, staring at the door, waiting for the glow to bleed through the cracks. I told myself I imagined it. Sleep deprivation, stress, hallucination. But then I started reading. There's a story out there, a local legend, about a soldier from Vietnam who disappeared on that stretch of road back in the 70s. Hitchhiker, discharged and disoriented? Last seen walking east down FM 1960 toward Dayton. No body ever found. Some say he was hit and left to rot in the pines. Some say he walked straight into the lake and never came back out. Others say he never left. They call him the glowing man. Drivers claim he follows them, always ahead, always walking, never past. A bad omen. Some believe he's looking for a ride home. Others say he's a warning, a guide to the other side. Since that night, I've had dreams, bad ones. I see his face in windows, in reflections, in the headlights of passing cars, and twice now, I've passed by 1960 without meaning to, like something keeps pulling me back. I don't know what he wants. I don't know why he chose me, but I think he's waiting, and I think next time, he's getting in. It was just past 11:30 on a Wednesday night when I pulled onto Loop 1604, the outer belt that cuts a wide circle around San Antonio. I was headed home from a late shift at the warehouse out in Selma. I always hated the hours, but the traffic at night was a small blessing. Less noise, fewer people, and nothing but a long dark road stretching ahead with the radio humming low in the background. The air was thick with that soupy August heat that never really dies down, not even after midnight. I rolled down the window, halfway to catch what little breeze there was, and the smell of mesquite and asphalt rolled in, familiar and oddly comforting. The inside of the car was quiet, just the soft whir of the sea and the occasional bump when I hit a seam in the road. I sipped the last of my gas station coffee and tried to keep my eyes open. I had maybe 20 more minutes before I could collapse into bed and forget the world. Then I heard it, a soft, deliberate tap like a single knuckle rapping on the rear of my car. I glanced in the rear view, but there was nothing. The road behind me was empty. No headlights, no cars, just the wide, dark stretch of 1604 lit by the occasional overhead lamp. I told myself it was nothing, maybe a pebble kicked up by the tires or the muffler settling, but something about the rhythm of the sound felt intentional. I turned the radio down and leaned forward, my knuckles tightening on the wheel. Tap. It came again, clearer this time. Same spot, same pitch, like someone knocking gently on my trunk. I instinctively reached for the dash and flipped on the rear camera. I've got one of those wide-angle setups that shows the full back end. It flickered on, washed in red from my taillight sand. There was nothing there. I let out a nervous laugh and cursed under my breath. Maybe I was just losing it. Long shifts, not enough sleep. Stress does things to your head. I drove on. I passed the Lookout Road exit and kept heading west toward 281. The tapping stopped for a bit, and I told myself to let it go. But just as I relaxed, just as I felt the muscles in my neck ease a little, it came again. Tap. Tap. Pause. Tap. This time it was faster, like someone was losing patience. I checked the rear cam again, still empty. My skin crawled and I sat up straighter, scanning the mirrors, trying to catch anything that might explain it. There was no wind, no rain, no reason for that sound to keep happening, and the rhythm was too human. I punched the gas a little, hoping to shake whatever paranoia had settled over me. The road opened up near a construction zone, cones and Jersey barriers marking some long-forgotten improvement project that never quite finished. The lights from the empty machinery cast strange shadows across the lane. I felt my heart thump harder as I passed through. Tap. 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 I didn't even wait. I pulled onto the shoulder, throwing the car into park, and jumped out. The air hit me like a wet blanket. I walked around the car, checking the trunk, the bumper, The taillights. I bent down and looked underneath, half expecting to find some animal clinging to the frame. Nothing. The road behind me was still empty. The only sound the chirping of night insects and the distant hum of traffic from far-off lanes. My hands were sweating. I stood there for a minute, not wanting to get back in. I kept turning around, scanning the tree line beyond the highway fence, listening for footsteps or rustling or breathing, but there was nothing. Eventually I got back in and locked the doors. The screen showed the rear cam again as I shifted into drive. Still nothing, but then the feed flickered, just once. A second long glitch static, then darkness, then it was back. But for that flicker, I saw something, a shape, a silhouette like a person crouched low against the trunk, pressed flat so the angle of the camera barely caught it. No face, just limbs and a shape, black and grainy. My breath caught, and I flipped it off, then on again. Gone. I stared at the screen, my pulse racing, my fingers shaking on the gear shift. I told myself maybe the image was stuck in the screen. A glitch, compression artifacts, old firmware, but I didn't believe it. Not really. I drove. Faster now, gripping the wheel tight, passing the 281 interchange and cutting south toward the Stone Oak area. I started seeing cars again, a few, headlights in the distance. I thought maybe if I got into a more populated area, whatever this was would fade. But the tapping came back, this time louder, angrier. Tap, 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 tap. I didn't check the camera. I couldn't. I felt it behind me. Not just in sound, but in weight, like something was back there, crouched against the trunk, pressing against the metal. I swore I could feel the car shift ever so slightly with each tap. I thought about pulling over again, but my body wouldn't let me. It was like whatever was back there didn't want me to stop. I'd never been more sure of anything in my life. When I hit the light at Blanco, I took the turn fast, tires screeching slightly. I needed to get home. I just needed to get home. That was the only thought repeating in my head. I could make it. Get inside. Lock the doors. Call someone. Figure it out in the daylight. This was some kind of night terror. A waking dream. Something. The tapping stopped as I pulled into my neighborhood. I slowed to a crawl down the quiet suburban street. All the houses were dark, everyone asleep. My house sat at the end of the cul-de-sac, porch lights still on. I parked in the driveway, but I didn't move. I just sat there, staring at the trunk through the mirror, waiting. Nothing. I turned off the car. The silence was deafening. I popped the trunk from inside. The latch clicked open, and I got out, walking slow, hands shaking. The trunk lid stood open. Empty. No smudges, no damage, no signs of anything having been there. I closed it gently and walked to the front door. Every step felt like I was being watched. I couldn't shake the feeling of something just a step behind me. Inside, I locked every door and drew the blinds. I stood in the living room for hours, afraid to sit down, waiting for another sound, another sign, but nothing came, until the next night. Same shift, same drive, same spot near Lookout Road. Tap. And again. And again. I don't check the camera anymore. I drive faster now. I haven't slept more than an hour or two at a time since this started. I've tried switching cars, even borrowing my cousin's truck. The tapping follows, always on loop 1604, always after 11 p.m. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it wants. But sometimes I think it's waiting for me to stop, waiting for me to open the trunk at the wrong moment, and when I do, I think it's going to climb in. It started just outside Lubbock, where the highway straightens out like a stretched cord, flat and empty except for the red blink of radio towers in the distance and the occasional battered gas station. I was driving east on US 62, the kind of late-night drive where your thoughts blur with the sound of the engine, and the only lights are the glowing dash and the sodium orange smear of passing signs. Wind howled like it always does out on the plains, pushing the truck sideways every few seconds. My wife, Lauren, was asleep in the passenger seat, her hoodie bunched up against the window. The dog, our mutt Toby, was curled on the back seat, snoring like he smoked 2 packs a day. We'd left El Paso late after visiting her sister, trying to make it as far as Abilene before getting a motel. The whole drive felt uneasy, like the landscape itself was watching. Something about that open space, the miles of nothing, made the back of my neck itch. But it wasn't until we reached the outskirts of Lubbock that the real weirdness began. It was around 12:15 a.m., give or take. The road was empty except for one set of headlights way behind us. I was in the center lane, humming along at about 65, trying not to zone out. That's when I saw him. At first, I thought it was just a shadow, a trick of the lights on the median. But then the high beams picked him up, an old man, walking against traffic, right down the narrow strip between the east and westbound lanes. He was tall, skinny, wearing a threadbare black suit like something out of an old funeral photo. His head hung forward, and his arms swayed stiffly at his sides like dead weights. He didn't flinch as cars blew past him, though there weren't many, just 1 or 2 in the opposite direction. He didn't seem to care if they hit him. His mouth moved as he walked, slow and deliberate. I slowed down, partly out of shock, partly out of that instinct to rubberneck at the strange and the broken. My headlights caught his face just for a second. Gaunt, pale, no beard, no mustache, just sunken cheeks and thin lips whispering something to no one. His eyes looked milky, clouded over like he'd been blind for decades. His mouth moved, forming a steady stream of names. I swear to God, I could hear them through the windshield. Not clear, not over the sound of the engine, but something pressed in against the glass like a whisper in a dream. Names, repeated softly, with intent. Most of them meant nothing. Andrea, Thomas, Celeste, Jacob, names like floating ash. Then he said one that made my hands lock around the wheel. Lauren. He said it again. Louder, clearer, like he knew she was right there in the truck with me. I turned to her. She hadn't moved. Still sleeping, breathing slow and even. I flicked my high beams back and stared into the rearview mirror, half expecting the man to be standing in the road behind us, arms stretched out like some backwoods prophet. But there was nothing, just empty asphalt and flickering reflections. I tried to shake it off, told myself it was my imagination playing tricks. Long drives, late hours, fatigue, all of it makes ghosts out of regular things. I didn't wake Lauren. We rolled on. 15 minutes later, she stirred. Didn't sit up, just mumbled, "What time is it?" and rubbed her eyes. 12:15. I said. She blinked and looked out the window. "You see that guy in the road?" I swear my blood turned cold. "What guy?" I asked, feigning confusion. She turned toward me, and her voice came out flat. "The old man in the middle, whispering names. Now, Lauren doesn't joke about things like that. She's always been a straight shooter, grounded to a fault. I could tell by the look in her eyes she wasn't messing with me. You were asleep," I said, quieter than I meant to. "No," she said. "I was listening. I couldn't move. It was like I was stuck between sleep and being awake. I heard the names. Then he said mine. We didn't talk much after that. Just sat in silence while the highway unrolled in front of us. I kept checking the rear view, half expecting to see that old man again, but he never came back. We got a motel in Post around 1:30 a.m., a squat little place with stained carpet and flickering hallway lights. Lauren didn't sleep. Neither did I. Next day, we tried to laugh it off. Told ourselves it was sleep deprivation, mass hallucination. Even joked that maybe it was just some deranged preacher out for a midnight sermon. But neither of us believed it. Not really. We didn't bring it up again for a while. But something shifted after that night. Lauren started having nightmares, deep, shuddering ones that left her sweating through the sheets. She'd wake up gasping, saying she heard someone walking down the hallway outside our room, whispering her name. I didn't hear it, but Toby did. He started growling at the door around midnight every night, low and guttural, tail rigid. After we got back home to Austin, it didn't stop. If anything, it got worse. The dreams, the whispers, the feeling of being watched from dark corners. One night, about a week later, I came out of the shower to find her standing in the hallway, eyes wide, shaking. She said she saw him standing at the end of the hall, swaying gently like he was caught in wind that wasn't there. When she blinked, he was gone. I started doing research, trying to find out if anyone else had seen him. Old man, Center Lane, whispering names. It's not exactly something you can Google without sounding insane. But I found something. A thread buried on a forgotten message board, dated 2009. A trucker claimed he'd seen the same thing just outside Lubbock. Midnight, median, whispering names. The only comment on the post was from someone named R. King69, who wrote, "Don't stop. Don't listen. Don't look him in the eyes." I didn't think we had. But I remembered the way his cloudy gaze seemed to follow us, like he wasn't looking with his eyes, but with something deeper. 2 weeks after the sighting, Lauren disappeared. I came home from work and the front door was wide open. No sign of struggle, no note, no pack bags, just gone. Toby was sitting in the kitchen, whining, pawing at the back door like he was trying to get out. I called the police, filed a report. They searched, interviewed neighbors, checked surveillance from traffic cameras and nearby gas stations. Nothing. That was 6 months ago. I still drive that same highway once a week, every Friday at midnight. I don't know what I'm looking for. Maybe I think I'll see him again. Maybe I think he'll give her back. Last Friday, I thought I saw something in the center lane. Just a shadow, gone before I got close. I turned down the radio, rolled down the window, and I swear, just for a second, I heard her name. Whispered low, like a promise. Lauren. I left Tyler around 10:30 at night. I'd had a fight with my sister over some dumb family drama, and I didn't feel like staying the night in her guest room with its floral sheets and faint smell of cat piss. The drive back to Waco was long, dark, and just empty enough to give a man time to think something I wasn't thrilled about. Highway 31 cuts through a string of nothing towns, the kind with shuttered gas stations and sagging barbed wire fences. You don't pass much out there after 10, maybe a lone semi here and there, the occasional pickup with a drunk behind the wheel. But mostly, it's just blacktop, silence, and the dull ache of your own thoughts. I remember the first time I saw the van. It was maybe 5 miles outside of Murchison. I just passed a busted billboard advertising a hunting supply store that probably hadn't been open in a decade. My headlights caught the glint of something pale, pulling onto the highway. Behind me, maybe 50 yards back. A white panel van. No markings, no decals. It didn't seem strange at first. People drive at night. That's not the weird part. The weird part is that it matched my speed exactly. 72 miles an hour. Not 70, not 75. Exactly 72. I switched lanes. So did the van. I slowed down. So did the van. I sped up to 78, then dropped to 64. Every move I made, the van mirrored it perfectly, never falling more than a few car lengths behind. I told myself it was just coincidence. Some guy driving on cruise control, maybe not paying much attention. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't random, that there was someone watching, not just watching, but matching. And that kind of attention, the kind where someone is deliberately keeping pace with you for 20 miles on an empty highway, that's the kind of thing that starts crawling down your spine after a while. When I hit Bronzeboro, I turned off into a gas station that still had its lights on, the kind with flickering fluorescence and one ancient pump that wheezed like a dying animal. The van didn't pull in. It cruised right past, not slowing even a fraction. I felt a wave of relief, told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe a little. Overtired, I bought a coffee, cheap and bitter, and made sure to walk around the car before getting in, just in case, but not even 2 miles later. As I was merging back onto the highway, I checked my mirror and saw it again. That same white van, same distance, same speed, like it had just been waiting for me to get back on the road. This time, I got a better look at it. No license plate, nah on the back. I watched carefully, waiting for it to pull alongside me, but it didn't try. It just hovered in that perfect spot behind me, close enough to make me feel watched, far enough that I couldn't make out the driver's face. I tried to brush it off again. Maybe the plate had fallen off. Maybe the guy was just shy. But I knew deep down that wasn't it. The next star was a blur of asphalt and gnawing tension. Every curve in the road, every little dip in the terrain, that van followed. I'd check my mirrors every few seconds, trying to catch a glimpse, hoping to see the driver fumbling with the radio or sipping a soda, anything normal. But the windows were too dark, tinted pitch black, like mirrors swallowing up the light. And every time I tried to pass another car or take an off-ramp, the van adjusted like clockwork. Somewhere outside Hubbard, the temperature dropped. I noticed it all at once. One moment the air from the vents was the usual sticky East Texas warmth, and the next it was like breathing through a freezer. I checked the dashboard. The thermostat hadn't changed. I turned off the AC. Still cold, not just cold. I rubbed my hands together and turned on the heat. Nothing. Still freezing. And then the windows on the van started to go down, not all the way, just enough, maybe 3 inches. All for windows, slow and synchronized, as if someone or something inside was letting something out, not in. I can't explain why, but when I saw that, I felt real fear. Not just nerves, not just discomfort, a deep, primal fear, the kind that makes your hands shake and your bladder twitch. The kind of fear that tells you you're not dealing with another person anymore. I floored it. 95, 100, my engine whined, tires hummed, and the dark pines whipped past in a blur. I didn't care about cops. I didn't care about deer. I just needed to put distance between me and that goddamn van. For a few glorious minutes, I thought I'd lost it. The mirror was empty. No headlights. Just blackness. I took the FM 939 turnoff toward Mart, figuring I'd lose it in the back roads. But 3 turns in, my headlights caught a glint up ahead, parked just off the shoulder, on a gravel pull-out like it had been waiting for me. The white van. I braked hard, fishtailed a bit, heart pounding so hard I thought it would break my ribs. The van didn't move. Its lights were off, engine silent. I sat there with my hands clenched around the wheel, trying to decide whether to back up or else gun it past. Then the driver's door creaked open. I couldn't see who stepped out, just a silhouette, tall and thin, but not quite right, too long, in the arms, or maybe the angle was playing tricks. It didn't move like a person, it sort of unfolded. A slow, deliberate motion, like watching a spider crawl out from under a plate. I slammed my door lock and threw the car into reverse, gravel spitting as I tore backwards. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, watching. Eventually, I found my way back to the highway, engine steaming from the abuse, lungs aching from holding my breath. I didn't see the van again that night. By the time I hit the Waco city limits, I was soaked in sweat and running on fumes. I pulled into a Denny's lot and sat there under the yellow lights for a long time, watching every vehicle that passed on Valley Mills Drive, waiting for a flash of white. I reported it the next day. I called the sheriff's office, gave them every detail I could think of. They were polite, but not interested. No plate, no crime, no real threat. Probably just a prankster, the deputy said. We get a lot of weirdos out on the highways, after dark, but something stuck with me. Something I only remembered a few days later. Right after that cold air hit, right before the windows lowered, I'd caught a smell. Faint, but sharp. Not gas, not plastic, more like meat. Not rotting, exactly, but raw, wet, animal. And when I think back to the silhouette of the thing that stepped out of the van, I wonder if it was wearing something human. Like a suit made of skin, the way it moved calculated, confident. Wrong. I started driving with a baseball bat in the passenger seat after that. I don't drive at night anymore if I can help it. And every time I see a white van on the highway, I check for plates. If there's none, I take the next exit. Doesn't matter where. Doesn't matter how long the detour. I don't care, because I know that thing's still out there. Waiting. Matching speed. I'd been driving for close to 9 hours when I first noticed the RV. It was an old, sun-faded Class C model, probably late 80s or early 90s, boxy and battered, crawling down the westbound lane of Highway 36 outside of Abilene. I passed it somewhere near Cross Plains, just after grabbing a stale gas station sandwich and topping off my tank. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Texas highways are full of those beat-up rigs, especially in the summer. People retire, buy a used RV, and think they're going to see the world, but this one stuck with me. All the curtains were shut tight, every window covered in dingy, yellowed fabric. No sunlight came through, even though the afternoon sun was blasting the landscape like a furnace. It was August and the air shimmered above the road like boiling water. The kind of day where buzzards ride the thermals for fun and the smell of tar sticks to your nostrils. I remember passing it and glancing over out of boredom. No license plate I could see on the front. The windshield was grimy, so caked with dust and bug splatter I couldn't make out if anyone was in the driver's seat. I chalked it up to the heat and the miles and didn't think about it again for another couple of hours. Then I saw it again, just outside of lawn. I'd stopped for a bathroom break, but a bottle of Gatorade, and stretched my legs. Maybe 15 minutes, max, yet there it was ahead of me when I pulled back onto the highway. Same RV, same shut curtains. No landmarks to mistake it by. It had this ragged blue strip of peeling paint that ran along the side like a racing stripe. I got closer. Checked. The rear this time, no plate there either. The rear window had a crack running across it like a spider web. Again, curtains drawn, I mean every single one. Even the little bathroom window had a curtain nailed down. That's when I got that first twitch of unease. Not fear, not yet, but a little pulse of something in my gut. The sense that something wasn't fitting right. I passed it again. Slowed a little to look through the windshield. I couldn't see anyone. The sun was low now, casting gold light across the hood of my car and glinting off the RV's side mirror. I stared hard, but the windshield was tinted and so caked with filth that all I saw was my own face swimming in the glare. I pushed ahead. I figured maybe it had pulled off earlier and gotten back on the highway ahead of me somehow. It was possible. Highway 36 has these looping access roads, and some folks take odd detours through the small towns. But still, I checked my rearview mirror more than usual. And I kept checking. All the way to Buffalo Gap. At one point I swore it was gaining on me, though that didn't make sense. The thing had been crawling earlier, but now it moved like it had somewhere to be. I watched it for a while and then lost it in a curve. I thought maybe I was just tired. Driving too long in that heat can make you see things, exaggerate patterns, chase your own tail. But then I passed it a third time near Tuscola. I came around a bend and there it was again, puttering along at a steady 40. I stared hard this time, not even pretending to keep my eyes on the road. As I drew even with it, I saw something that made my blood slow in my veins. One of the curtains, one in the back, behind the cracked window, moved. Not flapped from the wind, moved like a hand had pushed it aside. I caught a glimpse of fingers, 5, pale and curled, human fingers, pressing into the fabric like someone was peeking out. But as soon as I saw them, they vanished, and the curtain fell back into place. The movement wasn't casual, It was fast and purposeful, like they saw me seeing them and ducked back. I don't scare easy. I've done my share of night drives, gotten lost in West Texas oil fields, even broken down in the middle of nowhere with nothing but cow bones and silence around me. But something about that gesture was wrong. It wasn't just someone curious. It felt like someone hiding, and not just from the sun, hiding from me. Or from everyone. I tried to laugh it off, told myself it was a kid messing around, but no family would keep all their windows shut in that heat without running a generator or AC, and I hadn't heard a thing from the RV. Not a whine of engine, not a rumble of tires. It just floated beside me like a big white ghost on wheels. I sped up, pushed past 80. I didn't want to see it again. I didn't stop until I reached an old roadside diner near Merkel. It was dark by then, and the heat had finally started to bleed off the pavement. I sat in a booth by the window, watching the parking lot. Every car that passed made my heart thump until I saw it wasn't the RV. The waitress must have noticed, because she gave me the kind of smile you give skittish dogs before they bite. "You all right there, hun?" she asked. She looked about 60, with a smoker's rasp and dyed red hair that had grown out at the roots. "Yeah," I said, too fast. Then I added, "Been on the road a while. Think I'm seeing things." She nodded like that made sense. Poured me more coffee. I didn't tell her about the fingers. I stayed there nearly an hour. Ate some greasy hash browns. I didn't taste and waited until I was sure the RV couldn't be behind me anymore. Then I hit the road again, heading west, thinking I'd make it to Sweetwater and grab a motel for the night. I was 3 miles out of town when my headlights caught it. The RV, parked off the shoulder with its hazard lights blinking. No other cars. Nearby, no houses, just miles of dry brush and fence posts and dark horizon. My hands froze on the wheel. I didn't slow down, just kept driving, watching it shrink in my rear view. But as I passed it, something moved again. A shape in the driver's seat this time, a silhouette. I saw its head turn toward me. I didn't stop. I didn't look again. At the next gas station, I pulled in and told the guy behind the counter to call the sheriff. I didn't know what to say exactly. I told him there was an RV out on the shoulder. Might be broken down. Looked abandoned. I didn't mention the fingers. I didn't mention how it had somehow beaten me to that spot without ever passing me. I left my number in case they wanted to follow up. I stayed in Sweetwater that night. Slept maybe 3 hours. Kept waking up to check the window. Nothing outside but wind and the dull orange glow of street lights. Next morning, I called the local sheriff's office. A deputy answered. Said they'd sent someone out, but didn't find anything. No RV. No tire tracks even. I thanked him and hung up. For the next week, I didn't drive west of Abilene. I stuck to city roads and back streets. But today, I had to go back out that way. Work. Can't avoid it forever. And I swear to God, not 2 hours ago, near the same stretch of Highway 36, I saw it again. Same peeling paint. Same cracked window. Same yellowed curtains, drawn tight. And this time, I didn't just see fingers. I saw a face. Pale and narrow. Eyes black as oil. And it was smiling. I saw him for the first time around mile 2 of my usual Saturday ride. Just past the outskirts of Denton, where the cracked blacktop of Farm Road to 16 run straight into the fields like a vein under sunburned skin. The sky was the usual heavy, August blue, the kind that presses down on you, and the heat shimmered off the road in waves. I was sweating like crazy, chugging Gatorade between breaths, earbuds in, music blasting just loud enough to drown out the sound of the wind and my own ragged breathing. I didn't notice him right away. It wasn't until I hit that long curve by the dry creek bed that I glanced back and saw the kid small. Maybe 10 or 11 years old, riding a rusted-out BMX with chipped red paint. No helmet, skinny arms, tan, like mine from too much sun, and a smile on his face that didn't quite reach his eyes. His bike looked like it had been pulled out of a junkyard, but he pedaled with this smooth, rhythmic pace, like he was barely trying. I figured he'd come from one of the scattered trailers tucked between the mesquites. Some of the families out here let their kids roam free like it was still the 80s. No big deal. I nodded at him over my shoulder, expecting him to fade behind me once I hit the hill. But he didn't. I shifted up, stood on my pedals, pushed harder. The wind howled louder as I climbed, lungs burning, thighs screaming. I hit the top and looked back again, still there, not even winded, just smiling that weird, tight-lipped smile. I figured he was trying to show off. Maybe he was one of those local kids who spent hours doing wheelies in their gravel driveways and thought they could keep up with older guys. I just keep riding. He'd give up eventually, 5 miles in, and the kid was still there. My music had run out and my phone had started overheating in the sun. So I pulled the earbuds out and listened. No tires on gravel, no chain clicking, just wind and the occasional cicada buzzing somewhere off in the brush. But when I looked back again, there he was, same distance behind me, same grin. His eyes were hidden under the shadow of his cap, but his face was turned straight at me, like he hadn't blinked the whole ride. At the 7-mile marker, there's a turn-off that loops around a man-made lake, not one of those postcard lakes, either. This one's low and brown, ringed by dead trees and mosquito-filled ditches. The kind of place you go to fish when you don't care what you catch. I figured I'd lose him there. The trail split into dirt, paths and half-paved side roads, all weaving through the brush and scrub. I turned hard, my tires skidding a little, and pushed down the gravel trail without looking back. But within seconds, I could hear something. Not the crunch of tires, not even the rattle of a loose bike chain, just a weird, low whirring sound, like spokes spinning too fast, then closer than before. I heard laughter. Quiet, high-pitched, like someone giggling underwater. I turned again, and there he was. No dirt on his shirt, no sweat on his brow, not even a puff of air from his lungs, just that smile, and his legs moving like clock hands, smooth, mechanical. Something about that made my stomach twist. I stopped. I needed water, and I wanted to call someone, anyone, but my phone was dead. Not just overheated. Dead. The screen was black, wouldn't turn on. I checked my pack. Everything was still there. No sign of a puncture or anything weird. Just the sound of birds in the trees and my own breathing. I waited a full minute. No sign of the kid. Then I saw him again. Ahead of me. He was riding toward the same curve I was about to take. I hadn't even seen him pass. My mind scrambled to piece it together. He couldn't have gotten ahead of me unless he took a shortcut. And even then, how the hell did he get so far in front without me noticing? I stayed on the bike, but slowed down. Something was wrong. It wasn't just that he was fast. It was the way he moved, like time didn't apply to him the way it did to the rest of us, the way he never seemed to blink, the way his tires never seemed to leave tracks, even in the soft dirt, the way the birds stopped singing when he came around a bend. I started pedaling back toward the main road. No more exploring, no more trying to lose him. I was done. But about halfway back, right near the half-dried cattle pond with the algae-stained shore, I heard the bike again. That whirring. And now, for the first time, I saw his shadow pass over mine. He was above me on the ridge line, riding along the edge like it was a tightrope. His bike didn't bounce on the uneven rock. His tires didn't kick up dust. He dropped down a slope that should have sent him tumbling. But he landed clean, right behind me. No sound, no grunt, just motion. Smooth, steady, silent. I shouted at him. Told him to stop messing around. Asked where he lived. No answer. Just the smile. I kicked harder, legs screaming. And finally I hit asphalt again. Civilization. A gas station in the distance. A couple trucks passing by. Relief. I looked back once more. He was gone. I coasted the rest of the way home, trying not to look over my shoulder. I told myself I was dehydrated, maybe sunsick, that I imagined most of it. But that night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that smile, that motionless face. Heard that distant whirring dot. The next day, I went back out, not biking, just driving with a friend. We walked the trail a little, found no tire tracks behind mine, just mine, alone. But there was something else. At the spot where I first saw him, something shiny in the dirt, a rusted-out BMX handlebar grip, red rubber, worn down like it had been there for years. I didn't ride for a week. I told myself I was just spooked. Then I started seeing him in other places. Always on his bike, always smiling. One time in a Walmart parking lot, another time across the street from my school, just outside the chain link fence. He never moved toward me, never waved, just watched. I stopped riding completely. My dad eventually asked me why. I lied, told him I was tired of it. But I think he knew something was wrong. A week later, he told me something odd. Said he'd seen a kid on a BMX riding behind my car when I drove out to grab food one night. Said the kid peeled off into the ditch before the road turned. Said the kid never pedaled once. I moved to Austin for college, thinking I could leave whatever it was behind. But I see him sometimes. Not often, just enough to remind me he's still there. Once in a parking garage, once in the reflection of a shop window. The same bike, the same smile. I don't bike anymore. I don't even run. I walk everywhere, slowly, like maybe if I keep it slow enough, he won't have a reason to follow. But I don't think it's about speed. I think he shows up when you think you're getting away, when you think distance is safety, and I don't know what happens if he ever catches up. It started the way a lot of strange stories start, something small, something you could explain away if you really wanted to. I'd driven the road from Dallas to San Angelo probably 24 times in my life, mostly for work, but this time it was supposed to be different. My wife, Lana, and I were making a weekend out of it, planning to stop at a little B&B near Brownwood. She'd just gotten over a hellish 2-month stretch at her law firm, and I'd been itching to get away from the office, too. We packed light, left early Friday morning, and figured the road trip itself would be part of the fun. Music, junk food, a little reminiscing. The usual. We just passed through Cisco and were heading into that long flat stretch before Bollinger when I saw the billboard. Just a regular roadside sign at first glance. One of those old-fashioned ones with the metal supports planted deep in red dirt. It stood crooked on a patch of dry land, right where the mesquite started to get thicker. The paint was sun-faded, and it looked like it hadn't been updated in a while. But the message on it stuck with me in a weird way. It read, "You left the door open." I pointed at it as we passed. "You see that?" Lana was looking at her phone, probably picking another playlist. "What?" "That sign, that billboard. It said, 'You left the door open.'" She frowned. "Like an ad?" "No. Just that sentence. Nothing else. No logo. No number. Just that." She glanced in the mirror like she could still catch a glimpse of it. "That's creepy." "Yeah," I said. "Weird." "Right." We drove a few more miles in silence, but it was enough to give me a cold feeling in the pit of my stomach. I tried to laugh it off, chalk it up to some strange Texas roadside art or a joke. People do shit like that out here, sometimes cryptic God stuff, political one-liners, weird culty Bible verses taken out of context. You learn to ignore most of it. But something about this one stuck. We made it to the B&B around 2, checked in, and spent the evening wandering through antique stores and a local winery. For a while, I forgot about the billboard. We slept like rocks that night, the kind of sleep you only get after a long drive and a couple glasses of wine. The next morning, we figured we'd take the long way home loop back through Abilene and come down 20 toward Weatherford. We didn't have to be back until late Sunday, and the detour would give us a chance to explore some of the back roads we never got to see. About 20 miles out from Bollinger, I saw the billboard again, Same patch of land. Same rusted metal supports. But this time, it didn't say anything about a door. Now, in the same blocky black lettering, it said, "You shouldn't have come back." I felt my hands go cold on the wheel. "That's the same billboard," I said. Slowing down a little, Lana leaned forward. "What? Same spot. Different message." She turned to look at me. "Wait, that's not possible. That's not the way we came." "It is. Look, this road loops through the edge of Bollinger. It's the same highway, just coming from the other side." She looked back at the billboard, her face unreadable. "What did it say yesterday again?" "You left the door open. Now it says ... You shouldn't have come back." Neither of us said much for the next few miles. Later, that day, the GPS glitched out somewhere near Cross Plains, and I ended up taking another wrong turn. We laughed it off at first, blaming the outdated app and the patchy signal, but an hour later, we were back on the same highway near Bollinger, without quite knowing how. I saw the billboard for the third time. This time, it read, "Stop." I didn't slow down. I pressed the gas harder. Lana sat perfectly still, her hand clenching the seatbelt. "What the hell is happening?" "I don't know," I said. "It's just some prank. Maybe some dumb art project or ... But that didn't make any sense. This was rural Texas, not LA or Austin. There were no other signs around it. No surveillance cameras. No buildings nearby. Nothing but brush and broken fence line. The next 24 hours were a blur of odd turns, missed exits, and a creeping sensation of going in circles. Every route we tried brought us back near that same stretch. Same dead fields. Same buzzards. Overhead, same low line of mesquite on the horizon. But every time we passed the sign, it had changed again. "We see you. Turn around. We know." By the time we saw that last one, Lana was crying softly, one hand pressed to her mouth. The daylight felt stretched thin, as if it was being filtered through dirty water. There was a sickly quality to the sky, like the sun had been replaced with a dim orange bulb. The shadows cast by the billboard looked wrong, stretching too far, and bending toward us. I pulled over for the first time, slammed the car into park, and got out. The ground felt wrong under my boots, spongy and soft, like walking on old carpet soaked through with something foul. The wind was completely still, but I heard something moving in the brush, something slow, deliberate. When I got closer to the base of the billboard, I saw scratches on the metal supports. Deep grooves, some of them red, as if something had clawed at the base again and again. Then I noticed something else. There was no ladder. No access hatch. No mechanism to change the letters. No indication anyone had touched it since it was built. I circled the entire thing twice. The back of the billboard was just blank metal. No wiring. No power source. No logic. When I got back in the car, Lana was staring at me with wide, hollow eyes. "Did you hear it?" she whispered. "Hear what?" She didn't blink. It said my name. We didn't talk much after that. Just drove. I stopped trusting the GPS completely. I started taking old ranch roads, gravel paths that twisted between cow pastures and dried-out creeks. Eventually, we found our way to a gas station outside of Coleman. I told the clerk we'd gotten lost, and she looked at me for a long second, before saying, "You've been driven past the old sign, haven't you?" I stopped breathing. She nodded like she already knew the answer. "People talk about that thing. Always said it wasn't right. One day it was just there, like it grew out of the dirt. No one built it. No one remembers seeing it go up. Has anyone ever ... tried to take it down?" "Couple folks," she said. "Men from the county. Wrecked their truck on the way back. One of them still in a coma. The other's eyes went funny after that, like he couldn't look at the sky anymore. We left that station and didn't say another word the rest of the drive. Took us 6 hours to make it back to Dallas, and the entire time I felt like something was watching us from behind. Every reflection in the rear view felt just a little off, a little delayed, as if whatever had written those messages wasn't done with us yet. We haven't taken that highway again since. I mapped out every route and made sure to avoid that region entirely. But sometimes I still dream about it. I dream we're back, on that road, and the billboard is just ahead in the heat shimmer. Sometimes I see new messages in my dreams. Sometimes they're things only Lana and I could know. Sometimes I wake up to find the words written on the bathroom mirror. The latest. One said, "Come back, we're not going to." At least, that's what we tell ourselves. But the roads around here have a way of turning when you're not paying attention. And I swear to God, if I see that billboard one more time, I don't know if we'll be able to leave again. It started just outside of Luling, Texas, on Highway 183 flat, black road stretching between long stretches of nothing, with old pump jacks nodding in the fields, and the occasional barbed wire fence rattling in the wind. It was one of those August nights where the heat doesn't let go, even after the sun's down, where the air tastes like dust and asphalt and something faintly metallic. I'd been driving since Austin, headed down to Corpus to visit my sister, and I was pushing it to late. I don't usually drive at night, not since the wreck last year, but I figured it would be quieter on the road. Less traffic, less distraction. I just passed the turnoff to a little ranch road when the lights came out of nowhere brights, high and blinding, washing over the cab of my truck and stretching the shadow of my rearview mirror across the dashboard. At first I thought it was just some asshole tailgating. Happens all the time on back highways. Someone wants to pass, thinks riding your bumper will make you speed up. But when I glanced in the mirror, the lights weren't behind me, they were in front. An 18-wheeler, big and lumbering, barreling toward me from the opposite lane. His high beams were flickering, on, almost like Morse code. It startled me so much I nearly veered onto the shoulder. I slowed down, figuring maybe there was a deer or some roadkill in the lane ahead. Sometimes folks will give a courtesy flash to warn about a hazard. But as I squinted through the glare, there was nothing. No carcass, no stalled car, no loose livestock. Just road, shining under the moonlight like a stretched ribbon of oil. The semi roared past, and I saw the driver, a bearded guy in a ball cap, mouth something through his windshield. Could have been turn back or watch out. Could have been anything. But it stuck with me. I was about to pick up speed again when the lights hit me from behind. High beams again, this time glaring through my rear window. For a second, I thought the semi had somehow looped around and come up behind me. But that didn't make sense. There were no turnarounds out here. No place for a truck that size to swing around in under a minute. I looked in the mirror and saw the same glaring light, too high to be from a car, too bright and narrow to be from anything I recognized. No engine sound, no rumble on the pavement, just those damn lights, hanging there like eyes. I tapped my brakes lightly, trying to signal whoever it was to back off. The lights didn't dim. I squinted harder, trying to make out the shape behind them, but the glare swallowed everything. Then the lights blinked off completely. 1 second they were there, washing the inside of the cab in harsh white, and the next second it was black. Not just dim, gone, like someone had pulled a cord. I looked again. No vehicle, no headlights, no taillights, just the empty, dark road stretching behind me. I told myself I was overtired, that I'd caught a reflection off something, that maybe the truck had exited without me noticing, though my gut knew better. I kept driving. 15 miles down, I saw a gas station up ahead, an old-timey one with a single flickering fluorescent over the pump and a rusted Coke machine against the wall, the kind of place that feels more like a movie set than an actual business. The sign said open in paint that had peeled to nearly nothing, and I figured I'd stop, splash some water on my face, get a soda, maybe shake off the weirdness. As I pulled in, I noticed something strange. The station had no other cars. Not parked, not at the pump, not even around back. but the overhead light was on, and I could see someone behind the window, moving slow, like they were half asleep or drugged out inside. The air was stale and smelled like gasoline and burnt plastic. The guy behind the counter looked like he'd been sitting there for 20 years, thin and gray and sunken-eyed, wearing a name tag that said Floyd. He didn't look up when I came in, just stared at a little portable TV that was showing nothing but static. I grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge and brought it up. As he rang me up, I said, "You get a lot of truckers through here." He finally looked up, his eyes glassy but alert in a way I didn't like. "Not lately. I passed a rig a while back." Flashed his brights at me like he was warning me about something. Then I saw some high beams behind me that just disappeared. He didn't say anything for a second, just tapped a long yellow fingernail against the register. Then he said, "You keep going down this road. You're gonna see M again." "Who?" But he just shook his head, dropped my change into my hand, and turned back to the static. Back on the road, I kept the radio low. Classic country crackling through a weak signal. The road was quieter than I liked. No cars coming either way. Not even a porch light in the distance. Just more black. Then, about 20 minutes out of Refugio, I saw the lights again, same pattern. High beams up ahead, flickering in bursts, lighting up the trees like a strobe, and then again behind me, perfectly timed, like some kind of trap was closing in. I slowed almost to a stop, heart thudding, hands tight on the wheel. The lights ahead cut off first, and then the ones behind vanished again just as fast. This time I caught a glimpse before they blinked out. No shape behind them, no grill, no glass, just light, hovering. I put the truck in gear and started moving again, this time faster, trying to outrun the creeping dread clawing up my back. It didn't work. I started seeing things in the roadside ditches. Figures standing just behind the tree line. Sometimes they looked like people, just silhouettes, but they never moved. I thought I saw a girl in a white dress with her face turned toward the road. Then I passed a man kneeling, hands on the pavement like he was praying, face hidden in shadow. I told myself to pull over, to call someone, to turn around, but I didn't. Something about stopping felt wrong, like they were waiting for that, for me to stop. When I crossed into B County, my phone lit up with a text. No number, just a message. Don't look in the mirror. I didn't want to. God, I didn't, but I did. Reflex, a lifetime of driving habits you can't shut off. And when I looked, I saw myself, only it wasn't quite me. It had my face, but it was older. The eyes were wrong wide and black like oil spills, and the mouth was smiling. Smiling too wide. It didn't move like I did. It tilted its head when I didn't. It blinked out of rhythm with me. I slammed on the brakes, spun the truck sideways, in the road. My heart was hammering so loud I thought I was dying. I reached up, punched the mirror with the heel of my hand until the glass cracked and spiderwebbed, and that thing inside it finally disappeared. I sat there shaking, alone on that empty Texas highway, sweat running down my back like ice water. I should have turned around then, should have called someone. But I didn't. I drove on, too scared to stop, too scared to go back. And every now and then I'd see the lights again, never long enough to be sure, always just long enough to know they were still out there. I made it to Corpus before dawn, checked into a motel off the freeway, and stayed in the room with the curtains drawn. I didn't tell my sister I was in town. I didn't tell anyone. I left 2 days later, in daylight, and drove straight through, without stopping once. I haven't driven that road since. Hell, I don't drive at night at all anymore. But sometimes, when I'm in bed with the lights out, I see them again. The beams, flickering through my bedroom window like someone's waiting out on the street. And I know, if I ever look in a mirror again after dark, that thing might be looking back. Still smiling, still waiting for me to stop. The first time I saw him was just outside Del Rio. on Highway 277, heading north toward Sonora. I'd driven that stretch more times than I could count, especially after my divorce, when I started doing long-haul routes for extra cash. That part of Texas is lonely as hell, dusty plains, scrub brush, and nothing but the occasional jackrabbit darting across the asphalt. That's why it stuck with me. There wasn't supposed to be anyone out there. No houses, no cars, no towns for 30 miles in any direction. Just that figure by the roadside dot. It was around 2 a.m., and the road ahead was lit only by my high beams cutting through the heat haze and road dust. I saw him out of the corner of my eye standing off to the right, maybe 20 feet from the edge of the shoulder, a tall man in a dark trench coat, wide-brimmed hat pulled down low over his face. What made me nearly slam the brakes wasn't him being there, it was that I didn't see him out the windshield. Only in the mirror. He wasn't there when I looked ahead, I swear. I slowed down and looked out my driver's side window, squinting, leaning forward, and nothing. Just empty land, creosote bushes, maybe a half-dead mesquite. But in the rearview mirror, he was still standing there, same place, same posture, just a man watching my truck recede into the night. At first I thought I'd imagined it. You get road hypnotized out here, especially when the night stretches on and the caffeine wears off. I kept going, rolling past mile marker 244, trying to shake off the weirdness. Then, 20 minutes later, I glanced up at the mirror again and nearly drove off the road. He was still there, not standing by the road now. Not in the distance. He was sitting in the back seat of the cab. Hat still low, coat folded neatly over his knees like someone settling in for a long ride. The dome light wasn't on, but I could see just enough in the glow of the dash to make out the shape of him, motionless, silent, and unmistakably present. I pulled over hard, tires skidding against gravel, and threw open the door. I turned around fast, looking back into the cab. No one was there, but when I shut the door and looked in the mirror again, he was back. In the same spot, sitting perfectly still. I don't scare easy. I've driven through blizzards, dodged tornadoes, had some tweakers try to carjack me in Lubbock once, but this felt different. This felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain, like a pressure behind my eyes or a weight on my chest that tightened every time I caught his reflection. And it was only in the reflection I turned and looked behind me again, straight on empty seat. Looked up in the mirror, he was there. I turned off the dome light. I shut off the radio. I even clicked off the dashboard backlight just to be sure it wasn't a shadow or a trick of the glass. Didn't matter. He stayed. I put the truck in gear and drove faster, telling myself it would go away if I just didn't look. I made it to Sonora before the sun came up and parked at a truck stop off the highway. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. Every time I looked in the mirror, even the little one above the sink in the bathroom, he was there. Not moving. Just watching. I started covering the mirrors after that. Taped cardboard over the one in the truck. Left the visor down so I wouldn't catch a glimpse. At home, I turned the hallway mirror around and stuffed a towel over the medicine cabinet in the bathroom. My wife used to think mirrors were spiritual doorways. She burned sage every full moon and made me promise never to break a mirror in the house. I used to laugh at her for it. Now I was afraid to brush my teeth. But here's the thing, they started showing him in other people's mirrors, too. I stayed with my brother Travis a few days, trying to sleep off the feeling. Told him I had a migraine. I used his guest bathroom and left the light off. Didn't want to risk it. But that night, he came knocking on my door around midnight. Said he'd seen something in the hall mirror and wanted to know if I'd been screwing around. He looked pale, shaken, not like him at all. What did you see? I asked. A man, he said, standing behind me. I turned around. He was gone. I didn't say anything. Just packed my bag and left before sunrise. For a while I thought I could outrun it. I took different routes, stayed out of reflective surfaces, Even started wearing sunglasses inside places with glass doors. I gave up driving at night. But the man kept coming back. He showed up in the convex mirror at a gas station in Killeen, in the glass of a vending machine in Junction. Once, I swear to God, I saw him standing behind me in the black plastic of a turned-off TV in a motel. Always the same, long coat, wide-brimmed hat, still as death, never moved, never spoke. But the moment I looked away and back again, he'd be a little closer. I stopped going to work. Quit driving routes altogether. Didn't tell them why. Couldn't. Who would believe me? I holed up in a rental cabin out by Lake Amistad. No mirrors. No windows with glass. Even pulled the rear view off my old Chevy and tossed it in the trash. It helped for a while. Nothing for him to appear in. But it only bought me time. I started dreaming about him. Same setting every time. The stretch of road outside Del Rio. I'm back in the truck. Radio crackling with static. Headlights bouncing off the asphalt. I glance at the mirror. He's there. But in the dreams, he's not just sitting anymore. He lifts his head. I never see his face. It's always in shadow, just below the brim of that damn hat. But I feel him watching me, like he's waiting. Last night was the worst. I didn't go to sleep. Not really. I was lying in bed, heart thudding, eyes open. The cabin was pitch black except for the sliver of moonlight through the door crack. No mirrors, no glass, no reflections. And then I saw him. Not in a mirror this time, not in a dream. He was just standing there, in the hallway, outlined by moonlight. Not moving, not blinking, like he'd finally found a way in. I turned on every light, ripped open the emergency flare kit, and lit 3 of them inside the damn cabin. It didn't matter. When the light touched where he was standing, he was gone. But when I turned away and looked toward the window pane, there he was, watching from the glass, inches behind me. I don't know what he wants. I don't know why he picked me. I only know that he's getting closer. I think the mirrors were some kind of barrier at first. Maybe a rule, maybe something that limited him. But he's learned, adapted. I covered them to protect myself. Now, he doesn't need them anymore. If you're reading this and you ever see him, don't look again. Don't check the mirror. Don't try to see if he's still there, because he will be. And once you acknowledge him, he follows. That's how it starts. They say ghosts haunt places. Spirits linger in homes, in graveyards, in the places they died. But he doesn't care about places. He haunts people, and I think he's tired of riding in the back seat. I was somewhere between San Antonio and El Paso, the kind of in-between stretch of I-10 where the radio fades to static and the gas stations get farther apart than you'd like to admit. It was just past a.m. when I saw the glowing green sign that simply read exit to 7-9 services. I didn't remember ever seeing it before, and I'd made this drive more times than I could count. I was nodding off at the wheel, heavy-lidded, chewing on the inside of my cheek to stay awake. The glow of that sign cut through the dark like a beacon. I took the exit without a second thought. The ramp curved off the interstate into an odd, almost claustrophobic tree line. Not mesquites or scrub brush like you'd expect out here, but dense, dark trees that felt like they didn't belong in Texas. Pines, maybe, or something like them. It was weird, but I was too tired to care. After about half a mile, I came upon the gas station. It was an old-looking Shell station, but the lights were on fluorescent tubes buzzing overhead, bright enough to sting the eyes. The forecourt was lit up like midday. The digital sign out front displayed a looping message: open 24 hours, hot food, clean restrooms. That should have comforted me, but it didn't. Something about the stillness felt off. There were no cars at the pumps, none parked out front, no movement behind the windows. The place wasn't boarded up or abandoned, far from it. It looked maintained, pristine even, but it was silent. No insects, no wind, no hum of compressors, just the buzz of the lights. I pulled up to pump 4 and got out. The air was too still, too warm for that time of night. I swiped my card at the pump. The screen blinked once, then displayed "Please see attendant inside." I stood there a second, debating. I needed gas. More than that, I needed to pee and get caffeine in my system before I started hallucinating. So I walked toward the store. The sliding glass doors opened as I approached. Inside, the place looked normal: candy racks, soda coolers, a hot case, near the register with wrapped sandwiches under heat lamps. But still, not a soul in sight. The doors whispered shut behind me, and for a moment I wondered if I'd set off some silent alarm. I called out, "Hello." Nothing, just that same low buzz. No footsteps, no voices from the back, not even a scratch of the head kicking on. I walked the aisles, calling out again. "Hey, you guys open." I stepped behind the counter, half expecting someone to come storming out of a back room yelling at me. But it was empty. Registers powered on, receipt paper loaded, a pack of smokes half open on the counter like someone had just stepped away. I picked them up out of habit. Still warmed up, my brain started waking up faster than I liked. I walked to the back door, the one that usually leads to a stockroom or office, locked, but not from the inside. There was a keyhole and a keypad. I jiggled the handle, tried a few random button presses, then knocked. Nothing. I was about to give up and just fill the tank, maybe leave cash on the counter, when I saw the security monitor near the register, for black and white screens, flickering a little from static, but working. One showed the front pumps, another showed the store interior. A third was aimed at the hot food case, the last one. Though, that one made my skin crawl. It showed the restroom hallway. On the monitor, I saw a figure tall, standing perfectly still, just at the edge of the frame. At first I thought it was me, but I wasn't near the bathrooms. I waved a hand just to see. The figure didn't move. It was wearing something dark, almost shapeless, with a hood or maybe a shadow over the face. I couldn't tell. The resolution was too grainy. I stepped out from behind the counter, moved toward the bathroom hallway, heart hammering. As I rounded the corner, the hallway was empty. Just two doors, men and women, and a mop bucket against the wall. No sign of anyone. I pushed open the men's door, hesitating on the threshold. The lights were flickering a little. That's slow, irritating strobe you get in old gas stations. One urinal, one stall, a cracked mirror. Empty. I checked the women's. Two. Same deal. I went back to the monitor. The figure was gone. I checked all for screens again. Still empty. I told myself it had to be a glitch. Maybe an old recording or a motion-triggered display. But something in my gut told me different. I decided I was done playing detective. I left a 20 on the counter, filled up, and was about to get back on the road when I realized I couldn't find the ramp back onto I-10. I drove back the way I thought I'd come, past the tree line, expecting to see the interstate overpass looming ahead. But the road kept going, further into darkness. I turned around, thinking maybe I'd missed the sign. I retraced my path. Still nothing. The road twisted slightly differently this time, as if it was changing behind me. The gas station came back into view, but from a different angle than before. It was like it had rotated on its axis. Now I was starting to panic. I pulled out my phone. No signal. No GPS. Just a spinning circle and a message that said searching. I got out of the car and walked a few paces into the trees, hoping to spot the highway lights in the distance, but the trees weren't right. They were tall, to uniform, as if someone had planted them on purpose. The air felt wrong too, thick. It had a smell, like wet coins and decaying wood. That's when I heard it. A faint shuffle, like something dragging itself across concrete. Then a sound like a voice, but not quite, like it was imitating a voice. "Help me," it said, thin and reedy, to perfect and to off at the same time, like someone who'd never heard English try to mimic it phonetically. "Help me." I turned fast, heart hammering, and saw something moving behind the gas station. Just a shape, crouched low, slipping between shadows. I sprinted to the car, tires spitting gravel as I peeled out. I drove in loops for nearly an hour, trying every fork, every dirt path, anything that looked like it might lead back to the highway. I ended up back at the gas station 3 more times. Each time it looked slightly more decayed. The last time, the lights weren't on anymore. The windows were dark. The pumps rolled and rested. The canopy over them collapsed like it had been that way for years. My car sputtered as the fuel gauge hit. I didn't remember burning through that much gas. I parked and sat there, frozen. The silence pressed in. My phone still showed no signal. I thought about sleeping until daylight, but I didn't want to be here when the sun came up. I didn't know why, but every instinct screamed that daylight wouldn't help. I left the car and walked the edge of the tree line, keeping the building in view. After a few minutes, I came across a wooden sign I hadn't seen before. The letters were carved, not painted. Welcome to Ascana. That name meant nothing to me. It wasn't on any map I knew, but something about it sent a cold spike down my spine. I followed the path past the sign until I reached a clearing. There was a town there, a small one. Just a few buildings, a diner, a barber shop, a church. All of them looked abandoned, except for the diner. Its lights were on. Through the glass, I saw people sitting at booths. But none of them moved. They just sat there, staring straight ahead. One man had a fork halfway to his mouth, frozen like a statue. I backed away, feet crunching gravel. That's when the bell over the diner door jingled. A woman stepped out. She wore an old-fashioned waitress uniform, pale pink with white trim. Her hair was up in a beehive. Her smile didn't touch her eyes. "Welcome back," she said. I didn't speak. I turned and ran, past the church, past the boarded-up barber shop, past the gas station once more. My lungs burned, my vision tunneled. I don't remember falling. I just remember waking up on the side of I-10 as the sun rose. My car parked a few feet away. I was lying on the gravel shoulder, covered in pine needles. The fuel tank was full. My phone buzzed with notifications. I opened my GPS, and it showed I was right where I should have been, about 10 miles west of Junction. No sign of any exit. 279. I drove the next few hours without stopping, watching every exit sign like a hawk. I never saw that one again. I tried looking up Ascana when I got home. Nothing. No town. No history. Not even a ghost story. But I know what I saw. I know I went somewhere. Somewhere that didn't want me to leave. And I don't think I really did. Not all of me. I haven't been the same since. My reflection in mirrors lingers a half second too long. My voice on recordings doesn't sound right. And sometimes, late at night, I hear that perfect voice calling from outside my window. "Help me."